Okay, I would like to welcome everyone to the Henry County Zoning Board meeting of Thursday, November 10th, 2016. This time we're going to have housekeeping items. This meeting is being televised live on Charter Channel 180 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and will rebroadcast every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. and Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. and is available by video on demand on the county website. Now would be a good time to turn off your cell phones or laptops or anything that makes noise, if you don't mind. We appreciate that. If you're speaking tonight in the public speaking comment period, we're going to have you to fill out a public hearing speaker card, turn that in, and we're going to only allot 10 minutes for those in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those who are in opposition of the case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share the 10-minute slot and so forth. You need to come up and address the board and not the audience when you come to speak, because if you turn your back to us, we're going to assume that you're finished speaking with us, and then we're going to ask you to please sit down and let someone else come up. We're also limiting the presentations to 10 minutes tonight. The board will be available to ask questions if they don't feel like you've given enough presentation, and so they can ask questions, and that won't count against your time after you finish giving your presentation. At this time, we're going to have the invocation and pledge by Alton Head. If you will please stand.
Let us bow our heads, please. Father, we come tonight just to ask for your blessing and ask that you would guide us in every decision that we make, that it would be in the best for this county. In your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. The meeting is now called to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion by Mr. Nelson. Do I have a second? I have a second by Ms. Nesbitt. Any discussion? No discussion, hearing none. All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion by Mr. Nelson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Okay, are there any staff comments at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair. For the record, rezoning case number RZ 16-24, Ernesto Cruz. The property is located at 670 Locust Road, and it was inadvertently advertised as 670 Locust Grove Road. So for the record, we did post the proper parcel and met our advertising requirements. But just for the record, we just want everyone to know that it is Locust Road, not Locust Grove Road.
And that's case number 3.
Case number RZ 1624, which is third on the agenda.
Number 3.
So that's case number 3 and off.
The third item on the agenda.
The third item, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if I said that right, but yeah.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're going to move to the agenda items. So if we call the first case, please.
Case number CU-16-02, Shining Light Recovery Home for Women of McDonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 782 Racetrack Road and Land Lot 168 of the 7th District. The property consists of 2.375 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an assisted living facility in the RA Residential Agricultural Zoning District. It is located in Commission District Number 1 and will be presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Board members.
Good evening.
The subject property before you tonight is located on Racetrack Road, as illustrated on the overhead. This green hatched area is the subject property. And just to give you a little bit of context for where this is located, this road is Highway 81. You've got the public shopping center here at the intersection of Travis Road and Racetrack Road, there's the driveway that's shared with 762 and 772, and the subject property is here at the end of that shared driveway, which is number 782. And you may recall that back on May the 12th of this year, the subject property had a hearing before this board regarding a rezoning request for two parcels, 772 and 782, and that request has subsequently been withdrawn. So the case before you tonight is just for 782 Racetrack Road, and it's a request for a conditional use for assisted living. And the assisted living is intended to allow the use of the subject property as a residential treatment facility. This case is a little bit unique in that the definition of assisted living would otherwise require a state license. However, for the proposed use, no state license is required. And so what we're proposing is on the third page of your staff report, and it's under executive summary, and it's the second full paragraph down on page 3. If the Zoning Advisory Board has a finding that this use, if you choose to approve it, substantially satisfies the definition of assisted living, then we can move forward with the development of the subject property. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we do recommend approval with a single condition. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
And do the board members have any questions for staff at this time regarding this case?
At this time, there are 3 houses located on said property, right?
There are 3 houses that share access through this shared driveway, but they are all 3 different parcels. And so just one of those parcels is our subject property tonight. And it's the furthest property back at the very end of the shared driveway, number 782.
Anyone else have any questions?
Not at this time.
I just have a question about the public facilities, criteria point number 3. It's likely that the on-site sewage management system should be updated. Is that not a recommendation?
That will simply be a requirement. They will have to comply with the environmental health requirements, and we could make it a condition if you choose to, but they're going to be required to comply anyway.
To do that anyway,
Yes,
okay. And so that would take care of point 3 and then criteria point 5 also, is that correct? The on-site sewage management system is not adequate?
Regarding the on-site sewage management system, that is correct. You may recall on May the 12th that the applicant had requested certain variances, and those variances were largely variances from the development regulations for commercial standards. And so those variances were denied. If the applicant, when it gets to the development stage, if they're required to comply with commercial standards, there are no variances. They'll have to comply or request a variance, a series of variances again.
Okay, and then the criteria point, number one, as far as the traffic congestion, is that some of the, is that where the condition, comes in for the, I thought I saw something about, the driveway being extended or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm thinking about something else. We won't get into it then, I guess I'm missing something.
Well, if we want to explore that further, our county DOT may be better able to answer what are the thresholds to require commercial standards, and I'm sure that the intensity of use would play into that.
Thank you so much. I don't have anything else. Anyone else have anything? Okay, we'll ask the applicant to please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Zoning Advisory Board. My name is Andy Welch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Smith, Welch, Webb & White, and I am representing the applicant here tonight in this request for conditional use. Before I get too far along, I don't want to miss the opportunity of presenting some information for you for your records. Here I have a folder, Madam Chair, of 890 signatures, both on paper and online, of those people who are in support of the conditional use request. And I'm going to leave that with Stacy for the record. The request is for a conditional use, but historically I think it's important to go back over where we've been because as you know, and this board has already voted once to approve a comprehensive land use amendment for an O&I rezoning for this subject property. And the board has also recommended approval for the rezoning of that property to O&I. So a comp plan amendment as well as a rezoning approval to O&I. O&I would allow for any kind of office and institutional uses, including assisted living, care homes, treatment facilities, et cetera. So there's a list of uses that are permitted within an O&I. I've read minutes from your meetings. We have been in discussions directly and indirectly with property owners adjoining this property. And over the course of those discussions and over the efforts of Mr. Tuffy Murray in discussing this with one of the property owners nearby, we have worked diligently and been working with staff as well to change the request that you've already approved, which was an O&I request. And there was a pending conditional use request as well. And so in the course of these discussions, what we as an institution, Shining Light Ministries, decided to do was that the overall use of the property, it probably was not in the best interest of the community to rezone that flag lot to a commercial use with an O&I designation, office institutional designation. And so we withdrew the application. And it was pending before the Board of Commissioners, we withdrew that. And what we did do was then we went to staff and we worked with staff and went through the process. And looking through the code, we found that there was nowhere permitted in the code for a drug treatment facility that was in any form of a diversion type program. The only definition that gave us room within which to work was that of an assisted living. It's the only definition that we could fit and not run afoul of the code. And as you will undoubtedly know, our Constitution, our federal Constitution, and our Americans with Disability Act, and our Fair Housing Act, and our Recovery Acts, these are all federal acts, all require our local governments to make reasonable accommodations for people with medical conditions and people who have addictions and people who are in need that would otherwise be discriminated against based upon gender, such as women. And these federal laws require there be a give and take in terms of zoning. There has to be a place, a location in which you can operate an residential addiction facility. This is not a treatment facility. They do not perform any treatment at the 772 address or the subject property at 782. This is a residential home in which women, and only women, who have addictions to drugs and alcohol may reside there, come out of their own homes and outside of their families and stay in a residential home. But her new family is that of her sisters struggling with the same addictions, going through the same problems back at home that may have driven them to drink or to take drugs. And they have a new family, and that new family resides in a residential home, not so dissimilar from the very home in which the girl or mother or daughter or sister, aunt came and now is residing in another home, in a residential environment. Think about the emotions and the psychology of this. To have a place that's home, but home for this particular treatment. With your sisters struggling and fighting against an addiction. And that's what this environment provides. It's not an institution. It's not a hospital. It's not a medical facility. It's a home. It's a residence. And in that home, there is prayer. And there is faith. And there's faith in God that will see them through this addiction. No different than most of our homes here, regardless of your faith. You pray at home. You counsel at home. You read your scriptures at home. That's what happens in this facility, to rehabilitate them. It makes sense that they would go to a home, a residence, a residential use, to help fight those demons so that when they go back to their home, the environment is the same. A kitchen, a family, bedrooms, bathrooms shared with other people. It makes sense that you're prepared, you're in the right environment, you're trained to now fight the demons in your own home. And at that time, you're sober, and you have a new family, a support family, and then you have your family at home. That's why this residential area is so important. It's not an institutional use. It's not a commercial use. The trips into this facility are minimal. And so I wanted to share that with you. I think it's very important you understand the context of what this does. And this residential ministry has been in existence and operating at 772 since 2010 with a conditional use. And in that time, this body, different constitution, approved that conditional use. So next door, that conditional use has been approved. And so we proposed a conditional use for 782, and we defined it very narrowly so that it's specific to this residential use and not allowing medical treatment and medical or commercial type uses in the conditions that I have before you and I've handed out. I'll be happy to go over those conditions, and I'll probably do that when it's time to take some motions and discussion. But I want to also point out that in trying to work through these issues that exist between the neighbors, Shining Light Ministries has gone to the trouble and expense, donated, albeit, to try to provide some shielding. And so a fence, since they've last seen you all, and since you've last heard the protest, they have installed and put up a fence between the two properties in which there was some contention. And so they have installed this 8-foot fence running back. And that gives you a perspective. On your left-hand side is 772. Looking from down the driveway, not quite on 782's property, but it's in that flag lot there. You can see the fence shielding out Ms. Michelle's property on the other side at 762. And that has been installed, and there was some issue with the shared driveway area. The fence now runs through what was the shared parking area between the two homes, and that now separates the two of them. So in an interest and in an endeavor to try to, sometimes they say fences make good neighbors, and hopefully that's the case here, or at least improving the quality of the neighborship. So with that in mind, we've asked for the conditional use. We've moved away from the O&I zoning that's been requested and you've already approved. Of course, we ask you to grant this conditional use with the conditions that I've handed out to keep it very narrowly tailored and limited to a residential use in quality. I think the other important aspect of this case is that you should also know that it's gone through both 772, but 782 in particular, which is the subject property, has already been approved in terms of its occupancy as a residence. And it was approved by the Office of the Fire Marshal, and it was done so back in 2013 for the purposes of what is called in the fire code a rooming house. It's a residential facility. And a rooming house, it allows, under this fire marshal report, 10 occupancies for classification purposes. And that's been approved by the county. The same certificate of occupancy is also applicable to the 772 property adjoining this one, in which they have the shared driveway. The licensing under this is that they are licensed under the Georgia Association of Recovery Residences, which has a comprehensive list of qualifications both in property and in use and in practice that all have to be adhered to, including where you have to be tested, breathalyzed tests going in and out of the facility. And so there's a high level of security, there's a high level of protection, and all to try to ensure that these ladies become sober and go back to their homes and can become productive members of the society. Once again, good mothers, sisters, aunts, and that's essentially what we're working on here, but it is a residential use in its makeup.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We're just trying to be fair to everyone. Stay up here, so in case the board has any questions for you. And then we do have a copy of the conditional use, and if I can ask staff to put those up, please, so we can see those, so the audience can see those too. Do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, Mr. Head, do you have anything? We'll let you go ahead first if you have anything. If not, Mr. Nelson has.
I see in number one, it says 10 beds, right? So will that number increase?
The way the condition is worded, because there are two, there's the one 772 has right now 6 beds that are occupied. And so we've been asked by the neighbors to move. Just the short of it is this, is leave. We don't want you there. So what we did was we drafted these conditions, condition number 1 in particular, that would allow us to take the beds out of 772 and move them into 782 as an expansion. But in the expansion, we have to meet all the requirements that Stacy was telling you about earlier, in terms of being able to accommodate them with a septic field, being able to accommodate them in terms of the expansion. We would still have to expand the existing fire sprinkler system that's already there. So but that would allow us to move the residents in 772 into 782 after it's expanded in accordance with the ordinances. And when we did that, Mr. Head, when and if we do that in the future, that will free up the 772 property to be sold or reused as a home. And the conditions here state that 772, you'll have to voluntarily withdraw and rescind the conditional use on 772. So that would expire. So if you look at the two properties, 772 and 782, there would be no net increase in beds. We're just moving 6 over to 1. So that would free up that property so that we can eventually move to a larger facility if indeed Shining Light's able to raise the money, find the property, and build it, because you have to build it before you relocate, right? You gotta have a place for the ladies to go. So you have to build it first. And so with that in mind, we wrote this condition that way. Now, it doesn't mean, but you can't expand 782 unless you meet the two conditions underneath A and B. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. So it would not expand unless you met the 2 underneath. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got it.
Well,
Mr. Nelson?
I have a question in reference to that now. The fire code actually says it's a rooming house at 10 occupants, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but if you move it over and put 16, what's your classification at that point?
Still the same. When we went through this with the fire department to make sure that the numbers were accurate, and under the state fire code, a rooming house can have up to 16 beds for occupancy, and that's the maximum. And so when we make the expansion, so if you do build the expansion, before the CO is issued on the expanded areas of the building, the fire marshal would have to come back in, re-inspect, make sure that the sprinkler system's installed, the egresses are open and proper, et cetera. And then, at that time, it would be, the occupancy would be put up to 16, but the maximum state law would allow is 16.
Okay, but you're going from 10 to 16. Do they come in prior to going to 16? Do they come in and do the inspection prior to going to
Yes.
16?
Oh, yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you can't, yeah, we couldn't move anybody in until that was completed. And then once that's complete, then we would also have to withdraw the other conditional use on 772, so there could be no use of that property as a group home.
And this property now currently has a complete sprinkler system?
It does, yes, sir.
Okay. And what about a kitchen suppression system?
It has I don't know that it has a kitchen suppression center because it's not a commercial use, it's a residential use, so I think it's an R13 residential sprinkler system, which is what state law requires.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Risher?
Yes, I have a question about the vehicle trips and how the residents are transported for outside treatment and that kind of thing. About how many, trips per day maximum would be entering onto Racetrack Road from this facility?
Yes, sir. We currently and this is the current operations of the facility. At 782, what happens is that a van is used to transport the young ladies to AA meetings, also to treatment facilities for medical treatment, which is all off-site. So a van comes in, picks them up, and the van leaves. They are not allowed to have vehicles on the property. So the ordinance requires that we put in more parking spaces because that's what's required for the conditional use. We'll put them in. They won't be used because the ladies aren't allowed to have their own vehicles there. So they come in on the van and they leave on the van. The other use is that there is a room mother, a house mother that comes in and stays 48 hours. So she drives in one day, doesn't drive out the next day, stays there, and then comes back out. She may go out to run an errand, but she's supposed to be there 48 hours and to watch and supervise. Now, if the girls leave the house, I'm sure she might leave. But she comes in, she stays the night, and she leaves on the 48th day, and another lady comes in, and they swap out, rotate. The only other traffic that comes into 782, that property, would be a counselor coming in. It might be one or two counselors that come in for prayer ministry or for actual sobriety counseling. Usually there's a volunteer that comes in to pray, minister to the girls, and then there's also a volunteer there's a counselor that comes in as well. So in terms of trips, your maximum trip in and out on a day would be 8. Most of the time it would be less than that. And that would be the transport in. And the girls that are riding the bus that are in 772 also utilize that same van. So they're on that property, they're also getting into the van and driving out.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Madam Chair, if I could briefly interrupt. Chief Joe Kelly has a quick comment regarding the potential expansion of 782.
Okay.
Okay.
On 782, to get 16, they would actually have to add on to the building. So until that's done, they're only limited to 10. That's what the current building size is limited to. To answer the question about the kitchen suppression, no, they do not, because it is an electric, it's not gas, and under the electric, it's not required to have one. Thank you.
I have a question. There was a I'm just trying to kind of get my head around, there was a situation where they were having board meetings at one of the homes possibly, and so there was a lot of traffic from like the board meeting there. So when the residents move over to 782, will they still have board meetings at 772? Do you know?
No, because we'll be required to, if we move any of the, if you expand 782, the expansion would be to accommodate the ladies in 772. And once they move, that has to be surrendered so that you couldn't have any more, you wouldn't have a conditional use on 772. So that eliminates the use, if that answers your question.
Well, so what's 772 going to be used for? It's just going to be vacant?
It would be a residential home, because it's an RA zone piece of property.
Oh, okay, and then and so but right now there's 6 residents in 772?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess I'm not understanding, so was there a condition, like if they moved out, then it has to go back to RA? Was that what it was?
That's
was
what
the
this says,
condition?
number 1 says, yes.
Oh, the number 1 says that, so
So-
you're relinquishing that, so there won't be any so there won't be traffic when the board comes. But I guess to answer my question, will there be board meetings held at 782?
No, there's no room to accommodate them at 782.
I'm just, for traffic, because we were talking about the
Yes,
traffic, and I'm just trying
and
to.
there are board meetings that do occur there. I think they're monthly, correct that? I think at 772, there's a monthly meeting, and that, yes, that day that does occur.
Well, my question was, will that continue after the residents are moved over to 782?
If they need to locate their board meeting somewhere else, then they will do it. I mean, it's a.
I'm just asking the question, because I'm just trying, in my mind, what's happening at 782, it's just gonna be vacant? You know, you concerned about,
No,
a vacant
782
piece of property?
782 would be used as.
772, I'm sorry.
772 would be used as a residential home.
For who?
Well, whoever we could use it for, whether it be, because the thing is that our neighbors want us to move. So we're being told that we don't mind you, we just don't want you here. And so,
yeah.
in order to try to plan for that move, we've got to be able to sell some property and reorganize. And so this is a condition that allows that to occur if you approve it that way. Otherwise, you could approve it for conditional use with the 10 beds that are there, and they wouldn't expand.
Okay, all right, so I see. I was just trying to get what you're gonna do with 772. All right, my next question is this. 782, I guess, is further on down, right? Would you put the map back up so I
Yes.
can kind of get a visual?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a visual person. Okay, so 772 is the first residence, and then 782 is the next, is on down? Is that what you're saying? If you can point.
782, this is 772, this is 762.
Okay, so 782 is the subject property, so it's on down, okay.
Yes.
And they all share the driveway? Or who owns the driveway? Maybe
Shining
that's-
Light Ministries owns the
And
driveway.
so they maintain the driveway?
Yes.
Okay. But they share it with the neighbors at 162, is that correct?
The neighbors at 162 use the driveway.
Use it, okay, all right. But they don't maintain it, they just use it?
They don't own it, they don't maintain
Maintain
it,
it,
they just use it.
Okay. Is there a fence? So these ladies, when they come to the home, they can't drive, but I'm assuming they can go outside for recreational activities, or yes or no?
I don't think so. Teresa, are they able to go outside, the residents?
Girls exercise 3 days a week. They are supervised by the house manager. They walk up our driveway, up to the fence and back. Other than that, the girls are not left out because it is a locked-in facility.
Okay, so it's, okay, and so.
And by lock-in, she's meaning that they have to remain inside the facility. They're not free to go to
come
other
and go,
locations.
That's
Yes.
why, and I just wondered if there was a fence, like they needed to go outside or get some sunshine or whatever, because I'm assuming, even in jails and stuff, I think they let them go outside, for sunlight. I'm assuming that. I'm just trying to figure out if there was a fence, if they
Yes,
wanted to
and-
go outside and sit or whatever.
And to be clear, this is not. in
I
any
know
way
it's not, I'm just saying.
incarceration facility,
No,
so-
and I don't mean to insinuate that there is, and I apologize if I have insinuated that, and please forgive me for that, but my concern is them getting to be outside And she answered the question. They go down the street and they come back. So that was my concern, because I just don't want somebody to be inside all day without sunshine.
Well, and you'll hear from some of those that have graduated from the program are here tonight. So I think maybe they can help address more of your particular questions about their lifestyle and what it's meant to graduate from this facility, and how it has, completely and dramatically changed their life, both spiritually and chemically.
I guess I was trying to allude to is there may be a fence so that if they were to go outside, there's a fence so they can go outside and be outside, like to sit on a bench or something like that. That's kind of what I was alluding to.
If we had to install any more fencing, then that would cut off that would run a property line. It would run all the way up. If there was any more fencing, just so we're clear.
And I'm not talking about like a privacy fence, it's just more of a fence, like, I don't know, recreational fence, I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's fenced, the property has fencing around it currently.
Yeah, that's, okay, so
Yes,
it's private.
and with the addition of the white fence that I showed you earlier,
Right.
now 772 and 782 are fully fenced around.
Okay.
Except for up and down the driveway.
Okay, all right. And like I said, I didn't mean to insinuate in any form or fashion. I was just trying to give an example of there's places that folks can go out and enjoy the outside, and they're accommodated, and I just want to make sure that the girls were accommodated if they wanted to go out and get some sunshine.
Yes.
That's all, that was what that was for, so.
Yes, ma'am.
There again, I don't want to make it allude that this is a jail, so.
Understood.
Even though they're, like you said, they were locked in. So anybody else have anything? Okay, so thank you. You may be seated. At this time, we're going to call for those who want to speak in favor of the case. We're going to allot 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case, and you all share the 10-minute slot. So the first one wants to come up, and for those who want to speak for the case. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Sonia Snow, and my address, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
385 Winbrook Drive, McDonough.
Okay.
And I am here to talk about pretty much the daily schedules that take place at Shining Light Ministries, and to give more of an insight for the board as far as what takes place and what happens, and the major effect that is taking place in the community as a result of the ministry. For the most part, as you've already heard, the ladies do come in and they are supervised. They are watched. We have a well-versed background of correctional officers, certified house managers that come in, and they provide not so much of a service, but they actually are there to minister to the ladies and to be there for when they have challenges, to just really watch them from the day to day. I come in on Mondays, and I work with the ladies from a spiritual perspective to resolve a lot of the hidden traumas that they have had that may have led to their substance use, their alcoholism, things of that nature. So we walk through a pretty much detailed process spiritually to meet them where they are, to be able to bring them through these things so that when they are completed within the time frame there, they are able to, as you've heard earlier, to return back to their facilities and their family, not facilities, their families, with a renewed mindset of knowing that they have resolved a lot of these issues that have propelled their usage and their alcoholism. As far as the house managers are concerned, as I mentioned earlier, they come from a diverse background, correctional. They come from a background of being certified. The day-to-day operations not only encompasses trauma, but it also deals with spirituality. As you've heard earlier, we have people that come in to offer Bible studies, to offer spiritual counsel to the ladies, in addition to any appointments that the ladies have. They are off-site. They're off-site for doctor's appointments. They are off-site for any therapy services that are needed. They are off-site for psychiatry visits as well. Day-to-day operations consist of the ladies, again, the Bible studies, any AA meetings, they are off-site, but for the most part, just an overall Christian perspective that's being brought to the ladies to assist as they transition through life. What I'd like to show you now would be some of the house manager responsibilities. What you will see now are the day-to-day responsibilities of the house managers in compilation with the checklist that the ladies would have. So while they're there I guess it helps to do it that way. When the ladies are there, these are the house manager responsibilities. As you can see, the house manager reports to the director and any of the counseling staff. House manager works with the ladies to prepare menus using food charts, checks residents' beds, pretty much follows chains of command, supervises any particular phone calls that the ladies may have, because the overall environment that exists at Shining Light is to provide safety and stability for these ladies as they progress through understanding what has led to this years of abuse, use of alcoholism and substance abuse. The checklist, again, part of what the ladies do.
Yes,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. With only 6 minutes left to go, we have some other speakers. Can you leave the checklist with the staff?
Sure.
Sorry.
That's it.
Madam Chair, she's going to leave the checklist with the staff so that you can review that if you wish to. But with the time limit, we're trying to allow some other people to speak.
Fair.
Thank you.
All right,
Ms.
thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Timothy McBride, pastor Tabernacle of Praise Church right here in McDonough, 1640 Highway 42 North. I am here to support Shining Light Ministries. One of the challenges that I have as a pastor is when people come on Sunday to, of course, get what they need from the Lord, how do we meet their needs in their everyday life? People come up to the altar and they have problems, issues, and of course we pray for them, but you all know after prayer something has to be done to help people. And Shining Light Ministries is that organization that really helps people get over their problems, their issues, addictions. I've seen, Ms. Teresa has brought over 100 women to our church that have testified of how if it wasn't for this organization, they wouldn't be reconciled to their families, they wouldn't be off of their alcohol addictions. And I have seen the transformation of some of these ladies, how they've come in there really battered, really bruised, and then months later they come here looking like a whole different person. We need organizations like this in Henry County because for some reason we think that everybody's just okay, and everybody's not okay. When people come, they need to come to a place where they can get well. And coming to church on Sunday morning just doesn't do it enough for all these people that are coming. One of the things that it says in the Bible, it says, love your neighbor as yourself. And I'm just really amazed that we have neighbors that are not willing to reach out and really just provide a way for people to get well. This is what we have to do as a community. And one of the things I love about Henry County has always been a selfless community. We always try to reach out to help each other. I think we need to really take advantage of this moment and really look within ourselves, because I would venture to say that those that are complaining about this, if this happened to one of their children, if this happened to one of their family members, isn't it awesome to know that you have a place in Henry County where you could take somebody to get well? This is all about helping somebody get well. I hope y'all will consider this, and let's continue to support Shining Light Ministries. Thank you.
I only have a couple of seconds, so I'll make this short. My name is Donna Cote, and I live at 100 Light Horse Boulevard, McDonough. I'm a graduate of Shining Light Ministries about 4 years ago, so I have been clean and sober going on 4 years. I'm not a young person, you can tell. I'll be 50. So my drug addiction started with prescription medication. So I don't know if anyone can relate to that. But I lost everything. And this happened late in life. And I lost everything. And I did not have a place where I could live. My daughter would not let me live with her because by that time she had children. I was renting apartments and houses in Atlanta, which obviously was not a safe place for me to live in the environment. And praise Jesus for Teresa Bestwick. I have known her for years. I have known her going on 15 years. And she came and rescued me and took me into Shining Light. And I walked through that door a mess, an absolute mess. And when I went to Shining Light, I could not fold my laundry. I could not sort laundry. That's how just mixed up I was. And I'm a registered nurse. After graduating Shining Light, I work now as a registered nurse. I have a license as a registered nurse. I pay taxes. I just finished building a beautiful home. I have a relationship with my family, my daughter, my grandchildren. I'm a yaya. That's what they call me, my grandchildren. I'm a fantastic yaya. I'm active in my church. I know Pastor McBride. But when I was in Shining Light, I had this bedroom, this cozy little bed where I could lay down, and I had these clean blankets and I could sleep and I felt loved, and it was amazing. So, I mean, I'm in support of it. If it had not been for Shining Light, if the Lord had not come to my rescue, surely I would have dwelt in the silence of death forever. I would not be standing here before you today. So I just wanted to please consider that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michelle Amara. My address is 1244 Mill Creek Lane. I am a small business owner in the community, but I am also a graduate from Shining Light Recovery Home for Women. I struggled with addiction for 15, 16 years of my life. I broke many relationships in my life. I hurt many people in my life, but it wasn't until I went into Shining Light that I was able to find that safe place for me to recover. I was surrounded by love that was nothing but, people bringing in amazing ministries and Bible studies and really helping me to heal. With addiction, it's not just a quick 30-day fix. I was at Shining Light for 14 months, and that residential recovery home, having that place that was a home base for me really is the reason why, I am a business owner today. Me and my daughter, our relationships have been restored. I serve my community. People know me in the community and people know my story, and I'm okay with that. But one thing that Shining Light did teach me was to definitely get out there and serve and learn that it's not just about me. Get out there and help others the way that Shining Light helped me.
12 seconds if anyone wants to come up and speak in 12 seconds. Enough to state your name and address for the record.
Roosevelt Gates, and I stay at 3749 William Trail in Ellenwood, Georgia. I am the counselor over at the McDonough Probation Office, and I've been with the Department of Correction for 13 years. In the past 8 years, I have been working with Shining Light. We could not get the most of the probationers.
Sir, I'm gonna have to cut you off. Your time's up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. All right. For those who want to speak in opposition of the case, we'll give you 10 minutes. We'll let those who want to speak in opposition of the case, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
With your permission, may I present you guys with this?
It's part of your time. Well, you could just give it to me, I'll pass it down if you don't. That way it'll save on your time. Okay? Is that okay? Okay, all right, go ahead.
My name is Oliver Murray. I live at 964 Racetrack Road, and I have a house at 820 Racetrack Road and 752 Racetrack Road. All of those are contiguous to 782 or very close to it. I prepared these comments that I gave to you, and I've delivered a copy to the staff as a part of the record of the meeting that we are presenting here. Let me say first that I don't know of anyone in our neighborhood that is not supportive of Shining Light and its mission. We should all be grateful and celebrate its efforts and its successes in helping women to follow a Christ-like lifestyle. But in performing its mission as a charitable organization, it needs to do no harm to those around it. As the application itself shows, this facility that is proposed, and as it has been operated for several years without the benefit of a conditional use, will impact negatively the surrounding neighborhood. The problem that we see here is that it is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's made several efforts with submitted applications for rooming house and group home, and they don't work. It doesn't work anymore with this facility that they are going to call an assisted living facility. The land use code, insofar as it pertains to this matter, defines an assisted living facility to be a state licensed use in which domiciliary care is provided to adults who are provided with food, shelter, and personal services within independent living units. It goes on to talk about other things, but the 782 facility does not meet this definition in a variety of ways, and those are contained and more fully explained in the comments. Number one, it doesn't have a state license. The fact that it doesn't means that it doesn't qualify as an assisted living facility as defined. The state may not have then offered a license for such a facility, but that it doesn't offer a license doesn't mean that it's not a requirement of our code that it obtain one. It is quite possible that the code, when it was enacted, was intended not to permit an assisted living facility until a license was obtainable from the state, in order that there would be an outside organization that would come in and do regular inspections of the operations and the structure and the conditions at that facility. The county may not have wanted to assume that kind of a risk. So a state license cannot be simply ignored as part of the definition of assisted living facility. As has already been noted, 782 is a lock-in facility. By its very design, it is not a domiciliary environment. They make a big point of the fact that they're trying to present a residential environment, but they have in fact presented the people into a de facto jail. It's a lock-in facility. People can't come and go as assisted living people can do. They can't receive guests and family members to visit and so on. They can't just act as normal unjailed citizens do in this county. So it's not an assisted living facility as common sense tells us it's supposed to be. The code requires that food, shelter, and personal services must be provided within independent living units. It's highly doubtful that the rooms in which these beds are kept, two beds in a particular room, constitute independent living facilities. They don't have a bathroom separately or anything. And certainly the intention of the facility is not to deliver the personal services that are required and food and shelter within the independent living facilities. They don't do that at all. They have group facilities. They bring those in, group rooms that delivers those services. Finally, none of the 5 requirements to be considered under Section 110502 of the code has been met. That's clear in the staff report. So it seems to me that while we love Shining Light's mission, it's just not going to be proper to put that in this neighborhood. It doesn't fit into this neighborhood. We love to see it succeed in a neighborhood where it is properly zoned. And that's about all I have time for. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gil Maxwell. I'm an attorney formerly with Mr. Welch's law firm. It was at the time known as Smith, Welch & Britton, but I'm an attorney practicing here in McDonough. I formerly resided at 308 Shonda Cove, English Oaks subdivision, and in the last 6 months moved down to Jackson. I represent these fine people right here with whom you're familiar, I'm sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to belabor the points that my predecessor has made, but Mr. Welch in his letter to you all had indicated that the proposed facility comports with all the requirements of GARR. I'm going to enter into the record the guidelines for GAR. He's presupposing that some kind of adherence to the GARR standards is a substitute for licensure. And ladies and gentlemen, words have to mean something here. What they have applied for in this case, according to Mr. Welch's letter in his submission today, is that it would be a assisted living facility, which is defined under the Unified Land Development Code as a domiciliary care that's provided to adults who are provided with food, shelter, and personal services. But the first three words in that definition that I'm going to read aloud state, assisted living facility means a state licensed use. Those words either mean something or they don't. They can say that we don't need a license, but clearly the definition they're using, and I might add those definitions change on an almost monthly basis. They're literally trying to get a square peg to fit into a round hole. Maybe if we can come up with some definition of the proposed use of the property, assisted living facility, a drug abuse treatment and education facility, rooming house, a boarding house, you can insert any word you want to in there, but regardless of the anticipated use of that property, it neither comports with the GAR standards, nor does it actually comport with the other uses in the community. Now, I'm going to submit those GAR requirements that show with specificity. I've already tabbed it and highlighted it, and they're not supposed to solicit or accept any commissions, fee, or anything of monetary value. In this packet of documents I'm going to show you, or where they have solicited those donations online and have in fact accepted them. It says, the GARR says that any former client will not be hired as an employee unless a significant period of time, at least 1 year, has elapsed. We're going to show where, as soon as they graduated, some of those employees became managers in violation of the GARR guidelines. Then it says GAR members shall ensure that all program associates refrain from engaging in any dual relationships for a minimum of 2 years. Her own marketing materials that I'm going to show you in just a moment define themselves as a lockdown facility, which is prohibited. That clearly is in contrary to assisted living definitions. And number two, that they currently provide drug and alcohol treatment, again in violation of state law and GAR guidelines. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't expect to receive any applause from these people, but I have a person by the name of Christopher Colin Lee. He's my 25-year-old stepson. He became addicted to crystal meth in 10th grade, and I kept him out of jail for the first 4 or 5 times he appeared in court. We finally couldn't do anything more for him, and he served 3 years in prison because of his meth addiction. He also got in a fight with a drug dealer and lost his leg. He's 25 years old, has multiple tattoos all over his body, is a recovering meth addict, does not have a job, can't even get a job as a dishwasher at Denny's, and he's living with me. So anyone that thinks that I'm standing up here in callous disregard for the laudable things that these people do would be significantly mistaken. I have the highest regard for these people and their mission, but the simple fact is, ladies and gentlemen, this is the most significant point I want to make. Today's meeting is not a referendum on the desirability and how wonderful it is to have people willing to engage in this type of behavior. No one can argue that this is not a laudable goal, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to see if they are going to comport and be able to comport with state law and local law. I'm going to show also, and concluding, in Mr. Rudin Seals 421 due diligence notes, site distance cannot be achieved. A variance may not be allowed. It's a lockdown facility in violation of law. A deceleration lane is needed. It's not there. It needs to intersect with Travis Drive.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll ask the applicant to please come forward. Does any of the board members have any questions for the applicant based upon public comment that they've heard tonight? Mr. Head, do you have anything? Mr. Nelson, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a question for staff. Basically, I have a question for a fire marshal, and that is, now, how does this normally classify, or this facility, how would it normally classify throughout the county?
This facility right now, since they are not state licensed, they are listed as a lodging facility. And that's what we have on the certificate.
Now, at any point, will we require that they obtain a state license?
We would not know.
Okay. And the county, so in that case, the county has no requirement that places a state license on this facility?
Not from the fire marshal's office, no.
Okay. Anyone from staff, is there any place, Dante, that we can require, not that we want to, but is there any place in the future that would require that this facility obtain a license?
Based on our technical definition for assisted living facility, it states that quote, a state licensed use in which domiciliary care is provided. So technically, the certificate I think they mentioned earlier provides some sort of certification from the state of a type of use. But given that the fire marshal has classified as a lodging facility, that does not require a state license.
Okay.
You have to wait till the board asks you a question. Does anyone else have any questions?
I want to ask
Mr. Head?
They mentioned a decel lane. When would that be required?
On this site, it's kind of been a question that I've recently had with my boss and management above me. What do we consider this site to be? Is it commercial or is it not commercial? I know it's coming in as an assisted living. Any assisted living conventionally that I'd see come in, we'd treat it as commercial. And our zoning, our land development code says commercial development on the road, collector and above, has to have a decel lane. So until, from my vantage point, from where I live in the code, from where I sit, I have to say they have to have a deceleration lane, and also they do not have intersection sight distance from the existing driveway. The road's posted at 45, and what's there doesn't provide enough sight distance for a 45-mile-an-hour road. There are horizontal obstructions. I know when you come out and look to the right, there's probably a 3.5-foot diameter oak tree that appears to be outside the right-of-way that would clip your sight line as well as the fence. Looking to the left is a little better, but there's probably some vegetation that'd have to be trimmed back. But we do have regulations in the code about if it's a commercial development, about lining up, which would be very difficult because I don't know that they have enough frontage to line up with Travis. But the decel and the sight distance, per the wording in the code, it would be something that, best I can tell, I'd have to say they'd have to do.
Did anyone else have any questions, Mr. Risher?
Does the number of vehicle trips, I guess a trip would be one inbound and then one outbound, so that's 2 trips. And I think the attorney said that there would be, 8 or less trips per day. Would that have any effect on our weight as far as as far as whether a decel and XL lane would be required?
Not for current code, sir. I've looked at possibly tweaking the code to be based off of traffic, but I don't really have anything in the current code as it's written to where it allows me to allow or to basically let the requirement for a decel not stand. So, but yeah, speaking with Mr. Welch, he had mentioned the 10 or less, which is similar to a single-family home. Of course, I don't know how necessarily I'd regulate that, even if it were some sort of condition, but as it stands, it just says the current code, commercial development on collector or above racetrack, I think it's an arterial. It requires a decel, but it is something we have looked at changing, but we haven't changed it yet. That's what it states right now.
Okay, well, let me ask the planning staff this question. Would this facility be considered a commercial operation? I think it's a nonprofit organization. I don't know if that's a distinction or not, but would this have the standing of being a commercial operation, or would it be a residential facility?
Based on inspection and what we are classifying it concerning it being an assisted living facility and a lodging facility per Chief Kelly, residential.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for staff or the applicant?
I have one more question
Mr.
for
Nelson, that's okay.
Mr. Welch. Mr. Welch, now, why don't we have both facilities, 772 and 782, why are they not both on this same, asking for the same variance for the two of them?
Because this county has already issued a conditional use for 772. And so we were asking for a conditional use, and you've heard the other side say exactly what I've told you in terms of the constitutionality of the request. This is a square peg, a residential use for recovery, residential, not commercial. And it is, and there's nowhere in the code in which that fits. Constitutionally, under the Fair Housing Act and under the Americans with Disability Act and the Federal Act on Recovery, you have to provide reasonable accommodations for individuals, especially when you're dealing with a gender such as women, a special class. You have to provide them with the ability to have this residential facility, and that's critical. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to comply with the zoning code. And so our request is to fit as best we can within the zoning code so as to allow this use. If you decide to deny the use, then I think you'll be acting in an unconstitutional manner. If you place conditions on the use and treat it as it is not actually dealt with in terms of requiring decel lanes and those other commercial type activities, I believe also that would be a violation of the Constitution.
Now, I asked that to ask this question. Now, we spoke earlier in terms of actually moving from one facility to the other.
Yes, sir.
And you indicate that the neighbors want you to move. But what's the long-term goal? What's the plan of Shining Light? Do they plan to move from one facility to the other, or maintain as two facilities, or one facility under two roofs?
Yes, sir. And as you've already seen the long-term plans because you came through and approved an O&I zoning for both of these properties. I mean, this body's already approved the other uses for both properties together as one zoning application. And so this body's approved the commercial use, and you saw the building there was, I think, a 36-bed facility. State law says that it's not an assisted living facility if it has less than 25 beds. That's state law definition. So we don't meet with 16 or 10 or 6 or 8 or 5, we don't meet state law definition. There isn't a state license for us to obtain because we don't qualify. So we have the GAR requirements. We've included a condition that we maintain those GAR requirements as a part of the condition of the use, which adds that level of security that I believe the state license language provides in that code section. But the purpose would eventually be to locate to another facility, another area that we can build that same residential structure for 36 approximate beds. The problem here is that, I mean, you're a businessman. you know that you can't start a new business or a new thing without the capital. You've got to have the capital. And so all this does is it gives, the condition number one, gives flexibility so that there is an ability to shift beds over to 782, possibly sell 772, and then that way there'll be some revenue that can be utilized. They've got to pay debt on these properties. They have mortgages. So they have to pay the debt off, and then they'll be able to possibly move to another location if they can find that. They've got to buy it, and they've got to build it. And you all know that trying to build a facility under the fire code's requirements is going to require a commercial sprinkler system. You've heard the transportation requirements for a commercial facility. To move to something like that and to expand to that kind of use would trigger so many other financial obstacles that the amount and cost of that move is going to be very substantial. Thank you. So if we have some good benefactors, anybody wants to donate?
I just want, because some of these terms are kind of used intertwined, you know. I see conditions, I see assisted living facility under the conditions. I see commercial kitchens, but it's not commercial, it's not a commercial business.
No commercial.
I don't know that, I don't know the definition of commercial. I know what the definition is, professional and non-professional. Professional is someone who gets paid. I don't care how good or bad you are. I mean, you get paid, you're professional. So I don't know if commercial business is something that if you get paid, and this is a nonprofit, and I'm assuming they get their money through donations, but my question is there a fee for these ladies when they come in? Or is it the community, it's like the nonprofit pays it, or is there a fee that these ladies pay to come and to live at the residence?
I know that they don't charge a rooming fee for them.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. So it's kind of, when you say lodging, I'm thinking, is Airbnb kind of a thing, do they charge for someone to be there? So I just didn't know how the fire marshal designated as a lodging, so to speak, and wouldn't there have to be like so many spaces and all that kind of thing?
It depends on the number of spaces.
Okay.
And it doesn't have anything to do with the money part of it. It has to do with the number of beds.
I just need to have that in my mind. Okay. So that's all I had, except for you heard some of the comments of those who opposed the conditional use. Did you? And I'll give you maybe a minute to kind of, it was pretty compelling. So do you have anything you want to add to some of the opposition, that some of the things they said about, having to have that license and because it was they designated it as just a living facility when it's, what is it? It's a recovery facility. Is that what you guys were saying that it is? Just kind of help me, educate me on basically what really is it?
It is a residential recovery facility. It is what we've stated in these conditions, is what we have represented to you all throughout.
Okay.
It's easy, it's easy on the other side because you have a zoning code, which is separate from your fire code, which is separate from DOT standards. And by the way, Mr. Risher is exactly right. The international standards for determining the use of property for traffic counts is what Mr. Risher has said. And we use that. David uses that study. He uses that international study for his purposes in assigning uses and designating what facilities need to be built. And so the use is a residential recovery. We've said that. We have 3-4 different codes. You've got a state law that was quoted by Mr. Tuffy Murray. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to fit within your zoning ordinance, and you can either allow us to fit within the zoning ordinance with these very narrowly tailored conditions that protect the interest of property owners, ensure that we have to maintain this residential recovery standard from GAR, or you can choose not to.
Okay,
and you've already chosen to zone it. But let me say this, Madam Chair, one thing. I think this is very important. Very important. You've heard all of the people tell you how important this place is, and they're telling you that the conditional use that you've already approved for 772 has been instrumental in these ladies' lives. You've already proved it. It's already there. Not for this property, but the property right next door. And there is where a lot of the miracles you're talking about have occurred.
That was not my question.
So-
Thank you for
so-
the input. No, I'm
but
gonna
can I-
cut
can
you
I
off.
say- can I
Because
say
if I
these
give you
peop-
more time, I have to give everybody else more time. Okay, so listen to me. I'm asking the applicant questions, okay, to educate myself. He answered my question. I just didn't want you to elaborate on anything else because time is of the essence. Condition number 3, because code enforcement are the ones that have to make sure that these conditions are adhered to. And so in condition number 3, in order to satisfy the definition of assisted living facility under the ULDC regarding licensing, they must maintain membership in good faith with the Georgia Association of Recovery Residences. So, would you be opposed if we added something that says, and provide proof of that, membership upon renewal of your business license? Would that be acceptable?
That would be perfectly acceptable. We have no problem then.
I just don't want to have code enforcement have to go out there and check to make sure that you guys are in good standing. I just don't think that's, I think that proof needs to be put back up on the owner, if that makes sense. So a good use of time for county money.
Yes, and these people here, if they would stand up, are all in support of that, and I think they would all agree with that. Y'all stand up, would all agree with that addition to the conditions.
That's fine. I just, and anyone else have any, y'all can be seated, y'all. Anyone else have anything? Okay, thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
If the staff will please call the case.
Case number CU-16-02, Shining Light Recovery Home for Women of McDonough, Georgia, requests a conditional use for property located at 782 Racetrack Road in land lot 168 of the 7th District. The property consists of 2.375 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an assisted living facility in the RA Residential Agricultural Zoning District. The property is located in Commission District 1 and was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
Okay, we've heard the call of the case. Do you have a motion for this case?
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Head. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. I was recognizing Mr. Risher, but that's okay, because he raised his hand, but he just didn't say it. That's okay. Any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the approval of the condition, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carried. Okay, next case.
Madam Chair, real quick, for clarity, did you add to that condition that it will be the responsibility of code enforcement, or did you just say that they have to provide a copy of the certificate from GAR?
I said that they had to, upon the renewal of their business license, they had to show that they were still in good standing.
Okay.
Okay, is that for the record? Okay. Okay, please call the next case. And for those that are leaving, please, we're still in session, so please take your conversations outside.
I'm sorry, what is it? What she said?
Quietly, please.
Okay. Are we on the next case, Madam Chair?
Yes, I called for the next case. That's why I wanted them to be quiet so I could hear.
Case number VR-16-11. Waffle House Incorporated of Norcross, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations for a property located at 1480 Jonesboro Road in land lot 112 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.826 plus or minus acres, and the request is for wall and ground signs. The property is located in Commission District 3 and will be presented by Mr. Edward Morrow.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm sorry. Don't have enough room up here for some reason. Okay. So Waffle House to be located at 1480 Jonesboro Road. That's going to be between Sherwin-Williams and Dunkin' Donuts, if you guys are familiar with it. They're requesting a variance from development regulations regarding the maximum signable area for their monument-style ground sign. Being zoned commercially and the only business on the lot, Section 7.04.10E of the ULDC permits Waffle House to have a ground sign with a maximum signable square footage that's equivalent to 1 foot per building frontage foot. Okay, and as the building is situated, it's with its frontage on the public right-of-way in a manner that the frontage is only 23.6 feet. That equates to a maximum signable area of 23.6 square feet for this monument sign. They're requesting that they be allowed to place a sign that's approximately 50 square feet on the basis that evaluating their business on its longer side would actually permit them to have a larger sign. Finding that there's no extenuating circumstances, staff recommends denial of the requested variance.
Okay, do the board members have any questions for staff at this time? Mr. Richard?
Let's see, first of all, is there any record of any other of the new business that have been recently located in this area of having made a similar request?
I am honestly not sure, but I can definitely find out.
That question, Mr. Risher, for the Dunkin' Donuts, the Bojangles, and I believe it's Sherwin-Williams that's under construction now on that same, or in that same vicinity. No, we have not received any variance applications for this type of similar request.
Okay, thank you. Now, staff, could you explain how the size of a ground sign is determined? Is it based on some kind of a calculation that's in the land development code?
Absolutely, that's correct, Mr. Risher. Just one second, I actually have the portion of code here. So again, because Waffle House is actually the only business situated on the lot, and it's zoned commercial, it's going to be subject to these standards in this particular table. And what it says is that it's allowed to have 1 square foot per building frontage foot. That's not particularly readable, but I assure you that's what it says. Nonetheless, that size is going to be based on that. And because their building is situated with the short side to the public right-of-way, it has resulted in that maximum square footage of 23.6 square feet. If the building were situated in a different manner, they would be allowed to have 75.3 square feet.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for staff? I have a question on, I noticed that the Board of Commissioners, well, you probably wouldn't know this, they put conditions on this property, one being the sign, and also landscape buffer, and then additional vegetation. And so do we know if they're in compliance with that, or has that not been completed yet?
The increase in signable area, is there an inconsistency between the conditions? And
do you know?
I'm not sure, but it is definitely not consistent with the intent of the code.
Okay. So. All right, thank you. That's all I have. Anyone else have any questions for staff? Okay, we'll ask the applicant to please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Sanford McAllister, and my address is 5986 Financial Drive in Norcross.
Okay.
My name is Erin Cleland. I'm also with Waffle House, 5986 Financial Drive in Norcross, Georgia.
Okay.
Sanford is giving out some information that we're going to talk about as well, but I did want to make a point in the description on the agenda. It states that the variance request is for the wall and ground sign. In the staff report, in the second paragraph of the executive summary, it states the applicant has requested a variance to increase the allowable area for a wall sign as well. However, based upon conceptual site plan provided, no variance is required to permit the sign as proposed. So with that said, we're moving forward with strictly the ground sign. So this is a site plan of our property. The first criteria talks about extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property in question. Because of its size, shape, or topography, they're not applicable to other lands or structures. The lot size is 0.82 acres, and this is actually reduced due to the building setback lines and the previously approved interparcel access, which was approved by the county prior to us coming on site. So this right here is the 30-foot building setback line, and then over here as well. So the total width of the property is 132 square feet. If we were to rotate our 75-foot building, then we would not be able to fit on the property due to the building setback lines. If the building setback lines were reduced or the interparcel driveways were not currently paved and in place, then we would be able to rotate our building and have a 75-foot square foot sign. Under criteria 2, again, the building setback lines, they do prevent us from rotating the buildings, and like I mentioned before, the interparcel access drives are already in place, and therefore we don't really have anywhere else that we can put our building, which is forcing us to adhere to the 23 square foot sign based on the building frontage. Criteria 3 says granting the variance requested will not confer upon the property of the applicant any special privileges. As staff has concluded, we agree with that. We're not giving any special privileges. Other property owners can apply for the same variance if they choose to do so and felt they needed a larger sign. On criteria 4, we agree there's not really going to be any injury to the neighborhood or the general public if we increase the size of our sign by 50%. Again, as I mentioned before, we cannot rotate the building due to these size constraints. The sole purpose of this variance is based on the building setback lines and the previously approved interparcel access drives. We are actually requesting less than the 75 square feet, which we would be allowed to have if we were able to rotate our building. This one. So this is a picture of our proposed monument sign. I believe one of the board members was asking about the sign size. The maximum height that is allowed per the conditions is 8 feet, and we are meeting the 8 feet. We're not going to ask to go over that. Also, the maximum width that's required at maximum is 15 feet, and we're proposing 12 feet. So again, we're below that. And then that's what our 50 square foot monument sign would look like. Criteria number 5, the special circumstances are not the result of the actions of the applicant. These are existing circumstances that were in place on this property prior to us coming, the building setback lines and the interparcel access drives. And then criteria number 6 says the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the legal use of the land, building, or structure. We absolutely agree with that. However, we cannot position the building as we prefer. As we mentioned before, we're requesting the 50 square foot sign, which is less than what we would be allowed if we could rotate. And the 50 square foot sign works for Waffle House based on our 60 plus years of experience. There's a couple structures that we haven't mentioned yet near our property that are also affecting our signage. So there's a traffic signal box, and we've got a photo of that we'll show you in a minute, which is blocking our sign. And then also there's a very large DOT sign right there on the property, and it's for all the new construction that's going on at 75. I do want to show these photos. Okay. So here's the photos that we're going to show you. The first one is a picture of us driving, west towards 75. This right here is kind of hard to see, which is, I guess, kind of our point. This red circle would be the top of our sign. And you can see it in comparison to the Sherwin-Williams and whatnot. And right over here is this really large DOT sign, which, coming from the other direction, we'll show you next, completely blocks all visibility of what we would have of a sign, whether it's 23 square feet, 50 square feet, or even 75 square feet. So you can see right here, this is the DOT sign, and our sign would actually be positioned directly behind that, not visible from the road. And then this final picture we've got is showing the traffic signal box. And then this is Sanford, my lovely partner. And then right here, it's not even in the picture, but this is where our sign would be. So you can see the signal box and then again the DOT sign. And it gives you perspective of a person standing next to it, of how large these structures are, and it's affecting our visibility coming off the interstate. And as we all know, the majority of our traffic comes from the interstate. So with that said, you know, our main hardships, if you will, are the building setback lines that are already in place, as well as the interparcel access drives, which are already paved. We're kind of forced into our position.
And the huge structures that you see there, to say the least, are probably the most unique hardship that are blocking the visibility to the proposed sign location.
So again, what we're just asking for a 50 square foot sign. It's less than what we could have if we could rotate. So we're trying to hopefully come to a compromise where we can all be happy.
Is that your presentation? Okay. Any staff have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Risher?
Yes, I guess I'm a little bit confused on this. On this map that you gave us, the yellow outline is the buildable area of, for the.
That's correct.
For this tract of land. And now, are you going to have a sign on top of the building, on the roof too?
No, there will be no sign on the roof.
Now, and again, I'm a little bit confused, but if I'm correct, okay, this is going to be an 8-foot tall ground sign.
Correct.
And then it'll be 10 feet wide. So that's 80
I'm sorry, Mr. Risher,
square
the sidewalk
feet.
area only includes the body of the sign, actually, so it would just include this area with Waffle House.
Not the
and
monument
not the brick
portion.
monument structure.
Both the sign width and its height are less than the maximum requirements.
So what you're looking at is the 4 feet of the signage portion.
This
4 feet in
dimension right
height.
here.
Okay, that's where the lettering is. Then.
Yes, sir.
Correct,
Okay.
by 12 feet, which is 48 square feet.
And again, we would not even be here if the building could be oriented 90-degree rotation. In fact, we could have 75 square feet. And so that it's all about the initial thing that the staff presented on this diagram here that has driven the situation that we are coming here before you asking for a variance.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and I apologize too. I don't even know what it is you're asking because I'm totally confused. Okay, let's get back to the sign. If you want to show the
Yes.
sign again.
Yes, ma'am.
You're asking for a variance to be 50 square feet. So you said the sign is 8 foot by 12 foot.
Correct.
And is that just the lettering or is that with the base also?
The entire monument is 8 feet tall. That's the maximum per code, which
When you say the monument
are
from the
compliant.
ground up
This
to the
Correct.
dimension
top.
right here where I'm circling,
Right.
that's the 8.
So the full monument plus the sign cabinet is 8 feet tall. And that's within code compliance.
So what are you asking?
The size of the sign cabinet,
This portion here,
just
Okay,
the
you-
lettering portion.
And the code says it has to be how?
The,
23.
whatever the
23.
length of our building frontage is the maximum of the sign cabinet.
And you want the sign, that sign to be 50?
Yes.
50 square feet versus 23 square feet.
Okay, and my other question is, did you know that the DOT was putting in these expansions on this highway when you bought this property and decided to build?
We know in a word, and we did not know the size of them, in these cabinets or exactly where they were.
But I
We knew-
didn't ask, yeah, that's not the question I asked. I asked if you knew that they were
No.
expanding I-75 and.
Oh, yeah, we knew that there would be ramps being relocated. That's
Okay,
all we
okay.
had the DOT. And I think now that I understand where we left you with confusion. So in other words, as the staff was explaining with this good diagram, this red line here is what drives the square feet of the sign. If our building could be rotated like this, we're not even in this room tonight, because we can have not the 50 that we're asking for, but we could have the 75.
Okay, I mean, I
Got
understand
better?
now, I got it.
Okay, I'm sorry if we didn't
No,
make
no,
that
no,
clear.
it was my fault, because I wasn't confused with what you're asking for, I just didn't know, because I saw the dimensions of the sign and it wasn't clicking. So it's the
Sure.
wording that you want to be 50 feet. Well, will it fit on top of that, the base, if it was 50 feet?
That picture is a 50 square foot monument
This
sign.
is all dimensioned.
Oh, all of it's gonna be 50, okay.
Yeah.
Just the sign portion, not the brick base. The sign portion is 50 square feet, because it's 4 feet tall and 12 feet wide.
I have a
Yes, sir.
question.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you relocate the sign from this ground area to the building structure, the way the building is actually set up now, what size sign would you have?
The wall signage allows,
The wall signage is, they're 18-inch letters and on 3 sides of the building. That's what we submitted with our variance, and that's what they stated would be allowed.
yeah, that was
Yes.
acceptable. And so, as you saw from the photos, having the building set back this far from, here's Jonesboro Road, to give you a perspective of scale, each of these parking spaces is 18 feet, so you can see how far back you are before you get to the building. And so that's why this sign is critical. You can see that it's at least 50 feet closer to the road, and so that it could be seen when you're not being blocked by the large DOT structures.
Correct. And also, because these drives are already paved and in place and approved prior to us coming in, we can't even put our building to the front of the building setback line. We have to go back right here because there's already a drive in place.
Can you show me the road? That leads, like an overall, where is our overall? I just want to see, as far as traffic, does the traffic have to go down and turn around and come back to get to you, or is there a cut through there? Because if they have to go down and then turn around to come back to get to you, if they're getting off I-75 and turning right, if they're going north or vice versa, they have to go down to the red light, make a U-turn and come back, or go down further, they're gonna,
That's correct.
yeah, well, they're gonna see you anyway.
Now-
I mean, their sign, doesn't matter how big it's gonna be, they're gonna see, I'm not, and all I'm saying is this, I've been to communities where you can barely see the signs because there's all this vegetation and the signs are really small and you're driving down the road, if you're looking for it, you're gonna see it. I mean, you're not gonna miss the Waffle House if you're driving down Jonesboro Road and you're turning around and coming back because you're gonna see it. What difference does it make that the sign has to be that much bigger?
For visibility, yes, to your point, our building or sign could be seen after you pass heading away from the highway, exiting the highway and heading east. Also, those heading toward the west, toward the highway, also are going to benefit, even though they're not blocked by the structures, but just having a sign, as you said, that is a little more legible. And again, keep in mind that the code is written and intended to try to have safe size signs so you can see it, like you said, and have time to safely slow down. No one is doing any U-turns coming toward the highway. They're going to have to turn straight into the restaurant, and they're going to need to see us in time to make a safe turn.
Is that the only driveway? Or are there other businesses in that same driveway?
That is, we're sharing with
designated.
Sherwin-Williams, Dunkin' Donuts, and us.
Okay.
And
okay.
so, in order to slow down in time, again, we should, if we could only turn that building, we could have 75 square feet.
Right.
We know since we started this business, now we didn't start it since our business was started, 50 square feet is a very modest, moderate sign that can do just what you described. When you're traveling 45 miles an hour, that's going to give people time to see and make safe turns into the restaurant.
I think you misunderstood what I said. I'm not a component of large signs.
And no, and so I'm telling you, this is smaller than the code would allow if we turn the building.
But you're not turning the building, so I mean that.
Because we can't.
And that's I mean, okay, but that's not what you're here for. You're here for asking for a larger sign.
And it's related to, in the variance that we're asking for, is because we can't turn it, and we do have this hardship, and that's what, the process is for. And I would like to reiterate that as far as small signs, I am for those too. I mean, things that look great in the community. And I can assure you 50 square feet is very modest. And again, any of the buildings that can afford to orient themselves, which Sherwin-Williams has a lot more frontage, just by the shape of their building and the frontage of their wall. And so 50 square feet, a piece of plywood, when viewed from, 1,000 feet as you approach them, 32 square feet, you can hardly see it. But we do find spots from cranes that are dramatically bigger than this. I can assure you, I'm trying to find something in here that would represent 50 square feet.
Well, that's okay, because you're gonna have signage on your building. You already said it's gonna be on 3 sides,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be taller than what your sign is.
It can't be seen. That's the reason we're here tonight. It
Okay.
cannot be seen from the traveling public for them to make safe turns into
Are
the.
you gonna have trees there that's hiding it?
I have met the landscaping code according to, so yes, we have street trees. We're having to meet all of the landscape requirements. And as Aaron pointed out very clearly, we cannot bring our building up to the setback line. It has to be further back because of the drives that were approved for the Sherwin-Williams lot prior to us ever arriving on the scene. So we're not talking about a significant, I can assure you that it's not a large sign by any stretch. And as a matter of fact, it's smaller than the code allows and smaller than the conditions that were imposed.
I don't have any further questions.
I have a question.
Okay, Sandy.
Okay, so this picture shows the 50 square foot.
Yes,
To
ma'am.
scale.
Yes, ma'am, exactly.
Do you have a picture of what the 23.5 square foot to scale would look like to compare it to this one?
We don't. I've never done one that small, actually. It would be half, roughly, right? So if you can just change the dimensions on the side, we would change it to 4 feet and change it, and that would be to scale. I mean, it would be that in half, less than half.
2 feet tall by 6 feet wide, to give you an idea.
So
Of the signage part, yeah.
would you be using the same size monument base?
Everything would shrink in half.
Everything would shrink.
Yeah, I mean,
So you would essentially eliminate the whole top waffle line, and that would be 2 feet tall, just the house.
that's how.
And we would have to basically cut that in half to share Waffle House.
That's a great way to put it. So as Aaron, if you took this away, that's what's left. You would have to squeeze, the word house would have to become the word waffle and house.
So
23
we
square
have
feet.
basically half that size,
Less than.
less than.
Well, can you not go down to the monument? Does
Ma'am?
the monument have to be that tall?
It doesn't matter. As long as it's less than 8 feet, it doesn't matter. The monument's not entering into this part
Okay.
of her question.
Okay.
The sign itself, the yellow portion of the sign, which is
Okay.
all that is measured in terms of area, is.
Anyone else have any questions for the applicant? Mr.
So the monument itself is not considered as part of the, sign square footage, it's just where the letters are,
Correct.
correct? Now, on this drawing that you gave us, I didn't see where this traffic signal box was. I guess it's,
The traffic signal box is this one right here that one. That's the large one that I was seeing next to in the photo. This is the much larger sign. That's the DOT changeable letter sign. That yellow right here, and that's the other
okay,
structure.
that's where the DOT sign is.
Right. And
Correct.
here's how large they are relative to me in the blue shirt. There's the DOT sign. You can see how large that is. Here's the traffic signal box, which is obviously much larger than myself. And so.
So where are you putting your sign?
Right here.
Point to it in reference to that traffic signal. Go back to that other,
Okay,
I
here's
don't
the
see how
traffic.
that's blocking it.
go back,
This one here, when you're coming from the highway, is blocking it.
go,
This one here,
yes. And point to your sign?
our sign would be in this vicinity here.
Okay.
And there is no median cut in front of this, road that you come off of. It's a solid median
At
until
that
you have to
point.
go further east to turn around.
Exactly. For
Well, it would seem that most of your traffic would be headed westbound anyway to get to I-75.
It'll be both, yeah. The ones that absolutely, from my observations and watching both morning and evening, it's a fairly equal mix.
Mhm.
This is all about identification for both directions. It's not only the ones that get blocked from the highway. It's our building is set way back further than the setback, and so therefore its building signage is not going to be nearly as effective as it usually is. And so therefore, we're left with a monument sign, and this is a very modest size relative to what we do across the country in places that have wonderful communities that have good regulations like you. This is not big, I can assure you.
Any other questions for applicant? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna we'll have public comment for those who want to speak in favor of the case. We'll give you 10 minutes to speak in favor of the case. I don't see anyone coming up. For those who want to speak in opposition of the case, we'll give 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. Okay. I'm going to ask the applicant, one or both of you can come back up in case the staff, or not the staff, but the board have any other questions they might want to ask you. Anybody have anything else before we call the case? Mr. Risher, did you have anything?
No.
Okay, you may be seated again. We like to give you exercise here. Okay, let's please call the case.
Case number VR-16-11, Waffle House Incorporated of Norcross, Georgia, requests a variance from development regulations for property located at 1480 Jonesboro Road and land lot 112 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.826 plus or minus acres, and the request is for wall and ground signs. The property is located in Commission District 3 and was presented by Mr. Edward Morrow.
Okay, do you have a motion for this case?
I make a motion to deny the request.
I have a motion for denial. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Next case, please.
Case number RZ-16-24, Ernesto Cruz of Locust Grove, Georgia, requests a rezoning from R3 single-family residence to R2 single-family residence for a property located at 670 Locust Road in land lot 101 of the 2nd District. The property consists of 16.2 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a single-family residential subdivision, and the property is located in Commission District 1 and will be presented by Mr. Edward Morrow.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Good evening.
The case before you this evening, Mr. Ernesto Cruz is requesting to rezone 16.2 plus or minus acres from R3 to R2 single-family residential. The subject property is located in Locust Grove at 670 Locust Road, as indicated by the green hatchings on the map. I apologize. The subject parcel was rezoned in 2005 for the purpose of developing a single-family residential subdivision with approximately 30 lots. And at the time, the subdivision was slated to have 18,000 square foot lots served by individual septic tanks. However, the lot was never developed as intended. And on the rationale, the proposed lots at the time were supposed to be approximately 18,000 square feet. And in accordance with the new ULDC standards at the time, the zoning of the parcel was converted to R3, which as of 2009 required county sewer service. Up on the overhead, I'm going to place as a reference just our chart that shows when the ULDC was adopted, how the previous R2 zoning designation became the current R3, and how the lots were reassigned based on the square footage. Sorry, I will definitely make my displays larger in the future. Nonetheless, Mr. Cruz can't develop his property at present because of this sewer requirement, and he'd like to rezone essentially for the purpose of removing it. He plans to create 4 new residential lots with frontage directly on Locust Road. And the present home would be on a 5th lot that would be served by a new driveway that would go directly, sorry, it's the present driveway that's already connecting to Locust Road. The requested rezoning is in accordance with the future land use map designation of medium-density residential, and this particular designation targets developments with a range of 2 to 3.6 net dwelling units per acre, and this fits within that targeted range. The rezoning is also consistent with the present character of the area, as there are lots of large lot single-family homes that have direct access onto Locust Road. Staff does recommend approval of the requested rezoning with the following 6 conditions.
Other way, it's,
And those conditions are not in our book, is that correct?
yeah,
They
they
should
are, after approval. Page 5,
Mm-mm,
not on yours.
not on mine.
Okay, well, we will, make
have-
that,
I have it on
we
mine.
will note that in our notes, but they are in our staff reports. I'm not sure why you don't have it in yours, and I
Because I was gonna
apologize.
ask why there are not any conditions.
No, there's 6 conditions.
1624, you are on the right one, right? 1624, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, that, sometimes I am on the wrong page, but that's 1624, okay.
It's on the ones that I have, but. Any questions?
Okay, so, were you finished with your presentation? I apologize.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was reading the conditions before I asked for, yeah. So does any, board members have any questions for staff?
Yes, you said he's requesting this because of septic tank, right?
Exactly. Under the previous standards, I guess when this project was platted, the intent was to develop these homes on individual septic tanks, and at the time, the zoning designation did not require it. But with the adoption of the ULDC in 2009, there was a conversion that took place, and as the property was never developed, at this point, Mr. Cruz is kind of stuck. He's not able to develop because it's unfeasible to extend sewer to this one particular development. If that makes sense.
So, I'm seeing if I'm getting this right. These houses will have septic tanks, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Nelson?
Now, what's the lot size? I'm sure you probably said it in, it's probably in here, but,
I believe it's 18,000 square feet.
okay. And the minimum square feet per house is 2,000?
If it is zoned R2, the minimum requires 30,000 square feet.
How many?
30,000
30,000?
for R2
Well-
zoning. Current standards for R2 zoning is 30,000 square foot lots minimum.
I apologize. The proposed lots are 0.72 acres. They are in fact, they do meet the current R2 development standards.
Say that again, Dante?
Our current UODC requirements for R2 zoning, the minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet.
Oh, okay, all right, got you.
Will this require a silk pond? Silk pond? Will this, building this many houses?
I'm sorry, I'd have to defer to.
Are you asking regarding the septic systems?
Yeah, well, with this many houses, it's 16 houses, right?
No, there are going to be 4 new houses.
14?
4.
Oh, only 4?
Only 4.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm good.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll ask the applicant to please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Alex Cruz, and I'm here on behalf of my father.
Ernesto Cruz, and I'm living in 670 Locust Road, Locust Grove.
Okay.
And basically what we want to do was just rezone to R2, because currently we are in R3. Basically what happened was my father right now wants to build a house right now, but he wants to separate 4 lots, just for us 4 siblings. But right now, he's just gonna build 1 house on 1 lot. And basically, when we were building our first house, which is right here, we asked for a sewer system, but they say it wasn't available at the time. So basically, we just ordered a septic tank. And we put in the form for it and everything, and they gave us a septic tank. But pretty much since we're in the R3, we can't have a septic tank. That's only in the R2 zone. So what we want to do is just fix the issue here, because we're not allowed to build, because pretty much we're on the R3. But yet we have a septic tank on the R3 zone, so we need to change it to R2 zone. That way it's correct. And pretty much since it's an R3, that means all of them are R3. So that's why we're pretty much stuck on building, because we need to change it to R2. And that's pretty much the issue. We asked for a sewer system service, if they could connect a drainage pipe or anything like that, but they didn't. They say they couldn't. So we were just forced to pretty much install a septic tank. And as I said, with the division of all the lots, it meets code requirements. So we have no issue with those. We just need to pretty much rezone. That's just what we are requesting.
Okay, any questions from the board to the applicant?
He's building the houses for you all, right?
Yes.
Okay.
My question, back to what you're saying, the county has indicated to you that they cannot provide you with a septic system.
No, because 2 years ago when we went with our house, we asked them, and they were like, no, it was not available. It's too far away. So that's why we just decided to get a septic tank.
I have a question. So is this going to be a subdivision?
No, this is just private.
So the previous request, right, did y'all own it from when it was R3 down to, it's zoned R3, but because it says there shall be a mandatory homeowners association, there were conditions in the last zoning.
For the last zoning, we weren't there.
You weren't there.
We still didn't own.
Okay, so you bought it from.
Yeah, we bought it 2 years ago.
Okay. So, staff, will those conditions go away then? Is that correct? Okay, so is there anything in the conditions, and I was trying to look because I don't have them in front of me, that restricts it, because there were 11 conditions, and so that restricts the development to the 4 houses, or could they develop it and put more houses there in the future? Or is this restrictive? I just need to know what the future of this property could be, because it was going to be a subdivision, and I guess my question was it already, the utilities already put in for a subdivision, where it was like the site development, with the plumbing studs and all that kind of thing?
I'm not sure to what extent the original development, to what extent it progressed.
Well, I'll ask the
It's
applicant.
completely-
Was it already studded for plumbing and all the utilities already
We had
put in?
to install all that
You said
when
you
we were
had-
building our house.
Okay. So it wasn't. So it was,
No,
even though there was a
it was just
developer.
land.
Okay, so they never did any site development.
No.
Okay, all right. So back to staff. What's to prevent them from building other houses for a subdivision?
Well, at this point, there are no internal streets that are proposed.
Okay.
So if they were going to expand, the only area that they could do if they, built out the original 4 lots would be the interior. They would have to be served by additional streets and things of that nature.
But there would be nothing to prevent them from doing that.
It would be unlikely. It would be unlikely.
As long as they can meet development regs, then they have a constitutional right to develop the property as permitted by the regs.
That's what I'm saying. And then if they sold it and it's an R2, anyone else can come in and develop it and add houses.
As long as it's engineered accordingly.
Right. So, I'm just because of the conditions, that's why I'm, because it could be developed, and I didn't know if we need to put conditions on it, that if it's developed in the future, if there's more houses that are being built, if we should move conditions over that. I'm just kind of curious, is why we're just limiting, because it could be developed into more houses.
That's correct.
Technically, yes, but it would be in our best interest to stick to conditioning the subject properties that are before us tonight. We
Okay.
can't really speculate on
And
what
speculate
could
what's in the
happen.
future. Okay, all right, that's all I needed to know.
I just have one other question, and that, well, maybe two. That is, are you aware of these 6 conditions? If so, have you met those conditions with the current property that you're constructing now?
Yes,
Okay, so you have underground utilities and everything under these 6 conditions?
yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, one
All right, Mr. Head?
On this condition 6, so each of the individual house will have their own driveway, right?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna, ask for those who want to speak in favor of the case. We'll give 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case. Okay, I'm gonna allow, I don't see anyone coming up, so now I'll allow anyone who wants to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up, so applicants, please come back forward. So my question is, the houses you haven't built the houses yet, you just want to
No.
plan, but there is one house there,
There
right?
is one house, the one we're
That's kind of
currently
like in the
living
middle of
in.
the property, okay, all right, that's all I have. Anyone else have anything? All right, you may be seated.
Thank
We'll
you.
call the case.
Case number RZ-16-24, Ernesto Cruz of Locust Grove, Georgia, request a rezoning from R3, single-family residence, to R2, single-family residence for property located at 670 Locust Road in Land Lot 101 of the Second District. The property consists of 16.2 plus or minus acres, and the request is for single-family residential lots. The property is located in Commission District 1, and it was presented by Mr. Edward Morrow.
All righty, do I have a motion for this case?
Madam Chairman, I make a recommendation that it be approved with staff, with 6 conditions that staff has recommended.
Okay, I have a motion for approval, do I have a second? Second. I have a second by Ms. Nesbit, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicating by raise your hand. Okay, motion carried. Please call the next case.
Case number RZ-16-25, Hunsaker Partners LLC of Decatur, Georgia, request a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to OI Office Institutional for property located at 640 McGarity Road in Land Lot 121 of the 7th District. The property consists of 8.5 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a funeral home. And the property is located in Commission District 3 and will be presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. The subject property before you tonight is located on McGarity Road in the vicinity of the intersection with Russell Road. And just to give you some context, this is Highway 20 here and the intersection of McGarity Road and Highway 20 here. So the subject property, if you're familiar with it, is part of the East Lawn Cemetery. And what they wish to do is to split off an 8.5 acre portion of the East Lawn Cemetery, which is located here, and to request this rezoning to Office Institutional to accommodate the development of the subject property for a funeral home and perhaps associated uses. The survey shows that the subject property, as a portion of the greater East Lawn Cemetery property, is already somewhat developed with driveways providing interparcel, or once this is split out into its own parcel, it will be interparcel connectivity. The applicant's preliminary and conceptual site plan shows a rendering of possible development with the location of the facility here and associated parking. Staff has noted that the future land use map calls for public and institutional uses, which is appropriate for the development of the subject property as a cemetery and for funeral home that's operated in conjunction with such a cemetery. And so staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we do recommend approval with the conditions in your staff report. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board or staff at this time? Mr. Usher, you have anything? Okay. Would the applicant please come forward?
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you,
Good
ma'am.
evening, members of the Zoning Advisory Board. My name is Andy Welch. I'm with the law firm of Smith, Welch, Webb & White, and I'm representing the applicant in this request. If I may, I have a set of conditions that I've already given to staff. I'm going to present these to you if I may. The request is to rezone the subject property of just over 8 acres on McGarity Road to an O&I zoning classification for the purposes of a funeral home. Staff has already reviewed the report. Of course, they have recommended approval on that request. We have taken staff's conditions and made some slight adjustments to them and gone over those with staff, and Stacy is aware of those proposed revised conditions. They were designed to provide a little clarity with respect to condition number 1. The condition would allow us to have catering with the funeral home, not as a service, but associated with the funerals itself. So just some clarification there. I don't think staff intended us not to be able to cater a funeral, but and given the wonderful presentation that we had of Waffle House just a few moments ago, I couldn't help but think that if I ate enough Waffle House, I might need the services of my clients someday in the future. And you may cater your facility, you may cater the funeral with some delicious Waffle House, but in this case, we wanted to make sure catering was permitted as associated with the funeral or a celebration of life. The buildings, we did add cement fiberboard to condition number 2, and the reason why is because the request, if you'll notice, the situation of the property and the site design is such that we wanted to allow this facility to blend in with the residential community. If you're familiar with, and I think all of you actually take site visits, so if you're familiar with McGarity Road, most of the residences are pushed back from the property. It has a rural agricultural feel with some subdivisions located in the area, but generally on a larger tracts of land, the houses are pushed back. And so with the proposal, we have McGarity Road here, and in the conditions of zoning, we've actually included a condition. It's condition number 7, so it's the last condition which we added to staff's report, and that would require the front setback of the building to be 150 feet from the right-of-way as it exists today. And in addition, we require the parking predominantly to be on the side and the rear of the building. The building may locate here or it may be located here. One of those two places is likely. But we wanted you to know that, because what we're trying to do is we're trying for this facility to blend in with the community, to be conscientious of what the land uses are in that area, and to not have a predominant sea of parking right along the front of the road. We thought that was inconsistent. And this is coming from us, the clients making this request. It's very important. Now, Hunsaker Partners owns East Lawn Cemetery. And I was just out there the other day to remember the passing of my younger brother, Hunter, whose birthday was on November 5th, and upcoming is Kindness Week, which he was associated with our family, and our Kindness Week movement we have in Henry County and then all across the state. And I was there the other day, and it's, aside from being just bone dry out there because of the drought, It's a beautiful cemetery, and Hunsaker Partners owns both. So this is going to be putting their funeral home on their cemetery to allow for that joint use. And I think that's important because I want you to understand that in this request, where the staff has acknowledged that the buffer, the traditional buffer that you have between RA property, which is the cemetery is RA, and an O&I use, there's usually a buffer between those two, a vegetated buffer to screen them out. And the conditions, and staff has recommended approval on that portion, would allow us to not have the buffer as it pertains to the cemetery, so that you could see the funeral home and the cemetery together. I just wanted you to be aware of that because it's come up. Now, the buffer will still be required along the other part of the parcel, so as it adjoins the neighbors, the buffer will still be required. We wanted you to make sure that you knew that. The other part of this request is that the sign is the same. We did add some clarification to condition number 5, only just to separate out that the existing access doesn't have to be relocated because we're going to utilize this access that's already on the roadway for the main access. But if we did relocate it or we added a new access, it would line up as DOT has recommended with Russell Road. We don't own enough property over here to actually make that alignment work, so it's really next to impossible to do it unless you give us condemnation power, but I don't think you could do that either. And then the decel lane, we would put that on our property, but we wouldn't want to put it on anybody else's property. So those are 2 clarifications we made there. Also, and those are the main issues, I think, Stacy. I think we covered everything, just slight tweaks there. But we would request your favorable consideration and approval of this, recommendation of approval for this rezoning. I personally, growing up along this road, I grew up selling magazines and candy bars and riding my bicycle into the city of McDonough to go work for Zips when he had a burger joint where the Rite Aid is located, and he had a burger joint there and he had planes sitting on top of it, and I would wear a sandwich board, and he would pay me to walk around on Saturdays, and I would walk the square all the way up and down Frank Ward Drive and Keys Ferry, and come back around with the sandwich board in front and back, and I would do that, and I'd ride in on my bicycle. Yeah, very convenient right tonight. I can get you signed up later. But so we could put that on the tombstone. You're killing me, Andy. So I would walk those routes, and I would go back and ride my bicycle back home, and that was my Saturdays. And then if I wasn't doing that, I was going up and down the road selling magazines and candy bars, for the Boy Scouts or for my school, whatever organization. And so I tell you that only to say that when I met with the Hunsakers, I told them, I said, you have to understand, I've got to go visit people along this road. I got to go see Mr. Charlie Tomlinson next door and his family. And I've got to go see Miss Ease Osmond and her family. I've got to go see Paul Cates, who's my scoutmaster, and Don Edwards, who's my scoutmaster, living right there. I had to go see these people, meet with them, and tell them what was going on. And you got to let me do this before I file this application. And they agreed. And so I went down that road just like I did when I was a kid. And I went to those doors and knocked on the doors and stood out in the front yards or on the front porches. And I talked to all of them. And I just had to do that because, I try to make sure that when we present zonings to you from me and from our firm, that we are conscientious of the neighborhood and the community and what it means to live in Henry County. And we heard that from Pastor McBride. And I try to reflect that in what I do. And so, whether it be any zoning that we have, I try to make sure that I reach out. And we did that and walked down that road, and I drove and visited with folks. And so I think that's reflective. I don't know that we have any opposition here tonight on this. I hope we don't. But I just wanted you to know that because I think it's important because these clients, the folks that are here tonight, they're sitting right here, the 3 here, they all, they agreed to let me go do that. And that's the kind of folks that I represent. And they want to be a valued member of this community. They're in Cobb County. They have a great cemetery there. They've integrated the residential home into that cemetery. It's beautiful. And they have that same vision for Henry County and for this particular facility. And the other great thing about this is that by having the funeral home there on this property, is that they have an affirmative duty under state law to maintain the cemeteries in perpetuity, and they have to put money aside for it. So what better arrangement is it to have the funeral home where you'll have your operations adjoining the cemetery that you have to protect and preserve in perpetuity? It makes a lot of sense. I hope you'll agree. If you have any questions, I'll take them at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any board members have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Risher?
Yes, I just have one question about your site plan. I see where the primary building will be, but I think just to the east, there's another little small structure. What will that be?
That's the columbarium. So the columbarium, it's for the ash remains.
Okay. Will there be a crematory at this facility?
No, sir.
Okay.
They have a crematory at their Cobb County facility.
Okay.
So they have the means by which to do that, and they can obviously provide that service. So this will be very much a full, at the end of life, this will be very much a full service facility, both for traditional Christian burial as well as for ashen remains to be placed there and preserved in perpetuity there, in addition to the mausoleum that already exists on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Where would the sign, where are they going to put their sign? Can you point to where they'll put their sign?
We haven't actually
I didn't know if it was going to be up there at the
that
road
location.
or.
It will be on the road, and it, of
Right.
course, has to comply with the condition. I believe
Right.
there's already a condition on here
Right.
about the signage being 8 feet, so it's low.
What, excuse me, because I'm in construction, but brick, stone, cement fiberboard, what is that? What's cement
Hardy
fiber?
Plank.
Oh, Hardy Plank, okay, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We just didn't use the brand name because we
Yeah,
don't
right,
want to.
because that is Brian, that's right, so it's, yeah. It's
Yes,
just-
ma'am.
okay. All right, I don't have anything, does someone else have any? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
This time, we're going to call for those who want to speak in favor of the case. 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case. I don't see anyone coming up, so now we're going to allot 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. All righty. If you'll come back up, if the applicant, Andy, can come back up.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Risher, if you have anything else you would like to ask the
No.
applicant or anything? Anyone else? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
We'll call the case.
Case number RZ-16-25, Hunsaker Partners LLC of Decatur, Georgia, request a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to OI Office Institutional for property located at 640 McGarity Road in land lot 121 of the 7th District. The property consists of 8.5 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a funeral home. It's located in Commission District 3 and was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rootsil.
Okay, do you have a motion for this case?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the rezoning to O&I with the 7 conditions that we received.
Second.
From the applicant.
Yes.
I have a second. Okay, Mr. Babb, I have a second by Mr. Babb. Any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Motion carried. Okay, next case, please.
Case number COMP-AM-16-07, Racetrack Petroleum Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, requests an amendment to the comprehensive plan for a property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lots 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 2.29 plus or minus acres, and the request is to change the future land use map designation from medium high-density residential to commercial. The property is located in Commission District 4 and will be presented by Ms. Julie Yoder.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
The comprehensive plan amendment before you this evening are a portion of the property is located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway. I tried to highlight them, but you can't really see. It's these two right here. I'll go ahead and flip it over. According to the Henry County official zoning map, the subject properties are zoned R3 currently. The other 4 properties associated with this project, outlined in green, are already designated as commercial in the future land use map. and therefore do not need to be included with this comprehensive plan amendment request. The subject properties are medium-density residential currently and need to become commercial on the future land use map. The green properties shown in the corner, just for reference, are the city of Stockbridge. A note for reference is that the applicant is requesting C3, highway commercial, in a rezoning case, which you'll hear following this case, and of course initiated the need for this comprehensive plan request. In regards to Jotico Road, it's a major arterial and considered an appropriate corridor for commercial uses. And it's worth mentioning that when Jotico Road was widened, a great deal of the property sitting directly on Jotico Road lost property frontage in this area. So it makes sense that commercial properties developing along Jotico Road need additional property to make up for what was possibly lost in the road widening. With that being said, staff recommends approval of the comprehensive plan amendment, and with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any question from board for staff?
I just have one question.
Okay.
Is this in the activity center?
This is in the it's in the study boundary of the LCI, which I'll discuss more during the rezoning case following this.
Okay.
But a portion of the property is within that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, will the applicant come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Welch, Smith, Welch, Webb, and White. I'm representing the applicant of Racetrack Incorporated for this request. Thank you again for the opportunity to present this rezoning application to you. This is actually not the rezoning. This is the future land use map amendment. I'm sorry. The request is fairly straightforward. You'll see it's the back side of the property that's zoned the R3 designation that really causes some problems here. So it's these parcels back here that are on the future land use map are residential in nature, and that triggers our need to make the application to amend the future land use map. The request is, I think, fairly straightforward. It's just going to extend the commercial a little bit further back into those areas. There are currently no residences on those properties, so we're not encroaching upon those properties. They're owned by the current owners who have made this request and application and consented to it, I'm sorry. And that company that owns those lots own all the lots that are impacted, so we're not going to impact anyone that has a private residence there.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Mr. Richard?
Yes, what's going to become of those lots that, well, like for example, tract 7 and 6 that are just going to be remnants now from what they were?
Yes, sir. It's a good question. Tract 7, which is the corner parcel, of Holloway and Patrick Henry. So this right here is tract 7 that Mr. Risher is referring to, and tract 6 is here, and tract 5 is here. So 7, 6, 5. So counting down backwards. This is designated for commercial in the future, so that may be used as a commercial lot. And when we get into the rezoning, I'll explain to you that we're putting in a joint access rear alleyway that will be utilized for these parcels in the future should they be rezoned. This corner lot in particular, it is designated for commercial use. It's no different than what you see over here, this Eagle Crest property, in terms of its corresponding use. The remaining tracts will be remnant pieces, but both of which I believe will still be conforming uses for the R3 designation. But if they're not, of course, then there would be legal non-conforming uses that would have to continue on or be made conforming later on if they want to get the development to those parcels.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Nelson.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for those speaking in favor of the case. If no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition of the case. Come forward, ma'am. State your name and address for the record, please. You're speaking in opposition of the case.
Yes. My name is Mildred Chambly, and I live at 300 Chase Marion Way, McDonough, Georgia. And I tried to draw a quick map. I've never done this before, sir. Is this the right way? It is. I don't know if you can see. Okay, and I sketched it because, as I said, this is the first time, so
that's fine.
I'm trying. All right, so you see where Jodico Road is up there?
Yes.
Okay, that's Jodico Road, and and here's Patrick Henry. Off of Patrick Henry runs Holloway Road, and the land they're speaking about is right here. Okay, I live just on the other side of Holloway Road, on Chase Marion, and you can hardly, well, Chase Marion Way. And this one road here goes down to the schools, and every day, almost every bus from the school goes up this road. The police come down that road so fast sometimes that the wind will hit the house and you can feel a jar, and I'm not kidding. And it's just a really, really highly used road. And so the question is, they want to put a service station down here. Well, to get out on the other side, you know, you've got those concrete barriers now put in on Jodico Road. So that would all have to be changed. And you just don't want them coming down into the subdivision here where Chase Marion Way is. And so this land is a little bit higher, and once you level it down to meet the other end where they propose, that's going to cause a great amount of flood of water, which is already flooding down at the end of our subdivision when it rains. So unless something can be changed, this road is very highly used, and it's high speed most of the time. And that's why I'm saying it's not safe to put it where, put this where a lot of cars or anything can come out the backside at all. Nobody should be able to come out the backside. There were 2 other service stations on Jodico Road that went down, as you know, and I understand somebody may be getting the one across the street, but the one on the other side across from the new shopping center that's supposed to that is being cleared to be built is still vacant. So being the fact that there's so much traffic on this road and it's only just a narrow road, that they should not be able to use any of that coming onto that road. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If you have any questions, I don't know what else to say. It's just that they have no way in and out safe of that property right now on either side of it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I just think, we do need a decent service station in the area, but I just don't think that is going to be a good location, being the accidents I see around the area all the time, and the use of the road as it is. I wish you would take that land and do like some other cities, use it as green space, give us some oxygen. I mean, believe it or not, just on the other side over there, you have the airport glide path, and we get a lot of fuel dumps out there, whether you know it or not. And one day, a helicopter went down right in front of my house. So who knows what's going to happen. And so, all I can say, if you wish it and you override all situations, you put in every safety thing you can put in. Because not only for the school kids, but for everybody else that uses that road.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak in opposition of the case? If not, would the applicant come forward? Does the board have additional questions for the applicant? Any additional questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, if I may approach, I've been working with staff to adjust the conditions. I've also been working with Chairperson Casiglio about the buffer requirements that she wanted to see on this property, and I've revised those. May I bring them up?
Yes, please.
I thought that was for item number 6.
Okay.
Yes,
I didn't want to.
Save it for the rezoning.
Yeah, so, yeah, because on here, I didn't, this is just the comment.
Well, I have a question. You heard some of the concerns of
Yes.
the lady that was up. Are you guys prepared to address those, or have you looked into some of the things that she talked about?
Yes or no? I think that, no, Ms. Chambly did a great job. I think making very clear two important points, and that is access and not having access to Holloway Drive. I think that was number one. And the plan that we have for you does not access Holloway Drive. And in fact, Racetrack was, and the property owners actually are requiring this, that actually have a rear alleyway. It's a back entrance that's joint access that will not go to Holloway Drive. So there won't be an entrance into Holloway Drive. And it's a right in, right out on to Jodico Road. So there's no crossover access, which is that metal cement barrier that she was referring to. So we won't have that. We'll have right in, right out. And that right in, right out will work for all the parcels there, so that you're actually reducing your road impacts and traffic impacts as well, so it's safer. I hope David's pleased with that. And then the other entrance will have a left turn lane that can be added into it, but that's on the backside. But we have that on the drawings to show you. And then the second point that she made was also a really good point about stormwater running backwards to her property. So, Mr. Chairman, we will also show, and I can show that to you now, the topography map for this property. I know it's going to be hard to see it, but the topography of this map shows that this is the higher ground up here. Actually, it's all the way up this point here is the highest ground, which is actually where she lives. So she lives right across here on Chase Marion, and so the high ground is up here. So all of our stormwater is running this direction. So it's actually running towards Jodico Road and will not run north. And we will have to put in a detention pond, as Mr. Head had asked before on the previous subdivision. We'll have to put a stormwater detention pond to collect all that water that's running down towards Jodico Road, collect it there, so it will not, by this design, will not run to affect her property to the north at all. So those were two really good points that she made in the traffic issue. We are addressing that with that joint driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to call the case.
Case number COMP-AM-16-07, Racetrack Petroleum Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, request an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lots 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 2.29 plus or minus acres, and the request is to change the future land use map designation from medium high density residential to commercial. The property is located in Commission District 4 and was presented by Ms. Julie Yoder.
Okay, you've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Comp AM 1607.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Let's hear the next case, please.
Case number RZ-16-26, Racetrack Petroleum Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, request a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial for property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lots 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 2.29 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a gas station convenience store. And the property is located in Commission District 4 and will be presented by Ms. Julie Yoder.
Good evening again, Madam Chair. Good evening, Board. The rezoning before you tonight is the associated request to the comp plan amendment that you just heard. All parcels are requested to be rezoned. These three In yellow are R3, residential. These two on the corner are C2, general commercial. And this property here is C3, highway commercial. As you can see, this area is already a very mixed-use area, so that would be worth keeping in mind. And not to bore anyone, but to ensure the history of this area is clear, I'll give you a brief history on the LCI, which you asked about in the previous case, just so everyone's on the same page. A small portion of the subject property shown along Patrick Henry Parkway exists within the LCI, which stands for the Livable Centers Initiative, well, the study boundary, that is, which was commissioned to make communities more livable, walkable, accessible, and pedestrian and bicycle friendly. The LCI study was adopted by the Board of Commissioners on July 6th in 2010, and the comprehensive plan was amended to implement the LCI by the BOC October 21st in 2014. A Unified Land Development Code amendment to further implement the LCI was tabled by the BOC on October 21st, 2014. As all of the subject property will be combined, as we've conditioned, into one parcel within 12 months, staff is recommending in this case conditions applicable to the entire subject property, in part to reflect the intentions of the LCI. After considering what's currently existing in the immediate area, the proposed development for a gas station is not out of character. There are existing C3 zone properties to the west and commercial properties to the east and south as well. Generally, staff would deny a request for C3 for a gas station, as C1 is what's required. But due to the nature of these conditions to implement the LCI, we enthusiastically approve the request for C3. A lot of the commercial properties in this area actually sit vacant, and so we would like to see other commercial properties move in and perhaps adopt these conditions as well. So with all of that being said, staff recommends approval of C3 highway commercial for the subject property with the following conditions that aim to reflect the intentions of the LCI, including placemaking, livability, and walkability. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, and I'll put the conditions up now.
Okay. Any questions from the board or staff?
Could you explain to me, condition number 5, on the, says street trees shall be planted continue along all streets and private drives as approved by Henry, okay. So that's kind of a broad statement, all streets. What all streets?
The streets it borders, so Patrick Henry Parkway and Jotico.
Okay.
And I don't have a map up because I put up the conditions.
That's okay, okay, so, you know, it just was kind of, it just kind of seemed a little broad.
It's not gonna border all
Okay, so, and then, I didn't know what street trees meant, so is that like?
We said, I think we said, yes, as approved by Henry County DOT. We didn't want to give species because
Okay.
they have specific requirements.
Okay, and so, so is this going to be, and there's gonna be a pathway, so is it gonna be between the road and the pathway, or from between the pathway and the buffer? Or the tree, the street trees? I just need to know where you want the street trees to be. Okay, oh, that's good, yes.
Okay, so this is the easement that's referenced, the maintenance easement, it's referenced in a different condition. This orange-ish trail would be the multi-use trail, and then these red dots here would be the street trees, if you will, and they would sit on the outside of that multi-use trail.
Is that on their property or outside of their property?
It's on their property, as far as I'm aware.
The trail has to be on their property?
Or in the right-of-way. Right-of-way.
Which is it?
Right-of-way.
Right-of-way.
The intent is for it to be in the right of way, and more than likely, they put the caveat in there per our approval. I'd probably have those trees put on the back side of the multi-use path instead of between the path and the street. I go by Georgia DOT landscaping guide, so I'd have to look at that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think typically I won't put trees right beside the road.
So where would your landscape buffer be? I mean, I just, you know, if you don't have a landscape buffer or two, that doesn't make,
Landscape buffer is on the property.
well, I know, but can you like point to, Julie, like where their landscape buffer would be if he puts those
I think
trees
they
on the other
could-
side?
Well, technically, a buffer is where it abuts residential zoning, and it only does that on the back side of the property.
So there won't be any trees planted on the front and the side?
Well, they do have to also meet landscaping requirements.
That's what, yeah. I call it
But that's a
landscape
plan review standard, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure exactly what's required for that.
Right, they would have to submit a landscaping plan to our plan review department and meet our code requirements. Landscaping buffers would have to be between this zoning and another zoning. But to require a landscape buffer between the property and the actual road, doesn't meet the technical definition of buffering between zoning districts.
And maybe I'm using the wrong term, but I guess what I'm saying is if these trees, if they're requiring these trees to be on the other side, is that gonna conflict with landscaping that already they have to comply with?
No, this just complies with, or it actually implements the intent of the LCI.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's two separate things working together.
Okay, so, and she said that all the LCI has to be the same, so, David, are you saying that in this development of this LCI region, all the street trees are gonna be on the opposite, is gonna be on, not against the street, but on the other side of the pathways, right?
I believe that'd be the case. It depends on the species of the tree. Basically, on the distance from the tree from the edge of pavement, it's got a lot to do with what kind of tree you're planting and the caliper of the tree at maturity. And so I don't typically want to see an oak tree a foot and a half behind curb and gutter.
Right.
So
Now, on the street lights, is there like a number of street lights every so many feet? Or is it, I mean, I heard about the trees, but where are the street lights supposed to be? Can you designate how many or where those are gonna be placed?
It just states that, let's see, not to exceed 40 feet apart, evenly spaced, I believe. And
Where's that?
I believe it's condition 11.
Oh, yeah, equal distance, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't see the 40 feet, but,
It's in the last sentence of condition 11.
oh, 11, okay, I'm sorry. And on the street lights, is there restrictions on like what type of lights? Are there gonna be the, typical street lights, or is it gonna be, the illumination is gonna be kind of down?
I know we didn't condition it, but the intent is for it to be downcast, of course, being so close to the road.
Okay, should we condition that?
As far as I'm aware, you can.
Okay.
You can, if you feel like that would add more clarity to the intent of that condition.
So we just say that any street lights will be downcast lights, is that how you say it? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, the last sentence can read something along the lines of, such lighting shall be downcast, and shall be approved, and approved design a maximum of 15 feet, so the downcast can be the first part of that sentence.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Sorry, take up so much time.
Any additional questions from the board for staff? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'd like the applicant to come forward. Anything additional you'd like to add to?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a few conditions that we have worked out with staff and with the chairwoman.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman and members of the zoning advisory board, we have conditions that we worked out with staff. I don't think y'all have any objection to the conditions, do you?
No.
Okay. And we've, we can add to that the downcast lighting. I mean, we would do that anyway. Everything's moving in that it's been moving in that direction anyway, so that's not a problem. I just wanted to make sure that we're clear. The conditions that we have in here will require an enhanced vegetated landscape plan. That's number 5. So we've altered number 5 to be more specific. In discussions with the chairwoman, it was important to her that the density, if you will, or the size of the trees, it'd be a little bit more dense. So now your ordinance requires a 50-foot separation for your large trees. And to David's point, the landscape plan, we would move all the trees onto the property, and that does 2 things. One, it avoids a permitting issue with DOT by having large trees in the right-of-way. We would still have the multi-use path in the right-of-way, and that was very important to staff to have that, and we will install that. It'll be the first one that I know of that's been imposed by Henry County, in Henry County. I know some of the cities have multi-use paths, but this will be the first one, and this is, I think, intended to start that pedestrian-friendly walking path through this community, is to build a sense of community so that you can actually walk to the gas station and get there and not be on a little 2-3 foot wide sidewalk. But in addition to the multi-use path, the density of the landscape plan was critical to the chairwoman, and that was, instead of 50-foot separation on the trees, we went to 40 foot. So we're going to have a shorter interval. And in addition to that, the size of the trees under your ordinance only requires a 2-inch caliper tree at breast height for your large trees, and then a 1-inch caliper for your medium-sized trees. And in discussions with her, she wanted a much more substantial tree. She has seen places where the trees just look like twigs or sticks. And so with a 4-inch caliper tree, you're getting a very tall tree when it's originally planted that will have a very nice size to it. It'll look like a tree. And then in addition to that, the understory trees will be 2 caliper, which is doubling that size as well. And in addition, we also self-required, or I should sort of self-required, that the shrubbery that is planted be a 5-gallon bucket shrub. So these are substantial shrubs. So when they're installed, you're actually going to have meaningful vegetation on the property, so that it will be required of the property owner to maintain that vegetation that's there. It won't become a burden to the public or the taxpayers for having to maintain it in the right-of-way, because that's public property. And it won't create any visibility issues or sight issues for drivers, and it won't create any potential cut-down issue where it's either not permitted or later cut down for a widening of the road. So this preserves a visual enhanced landscape buffer along this property, which ties into that sense of having some sense of community. So you'll walk along the multi-use path, and on your right, if you're headed out to the intersection, there'll be a very beautiful landscape buffer there with enhanced standards. That's a significant concession on our part, because that with respect to any convenience store, you want visibility. I mean, that's really what you're looking for. You want to have that visibility from the interchange to attract customers to come in. But we're going beyond the code and actually doing a little bit more in that sense to achieve both the LCI purposes of having a more walkable area, but also to achieve a heavier vegetative requirement that I think the chair lady has wanted in the past. So we've worked hard on that. I think that there have been some other changes there, and I won't go through all of them because I think staff is in agreement with us on these proposed conditions. We would ask that you would adopt it with these conditions, and we'll look forward to installing a very beautiful product there on that road. And then I've talked to Ms. Chambly, and I wanted to explain to her what I was explaining to the Chairman Nelson. We do have that. This will not enter Holloway Drive, so it will have its own private access, as I mentioned before. And because of the nature of this rezoning, we have preserved the 40-foot required buffer where it is where it adjoins RA properties. So that's built into the rezoning request, and we preserved that in this. And that was important to Ms. Chambly, and she may have other comments too.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, David, I'm sorry. Just there.
All I was going to point out, on the new conditions, I did have a question about, on number 2 is a phrase on the existing decel lane along Jodico to be lengthened within the right-of-way or boundaries of the subject property. And I, basically the eastern property boundary is their driveway, so to me, the decel needs to be extended outside of their frontage. I mean, it can stay within the right-of-way, but I don't necessarily agree with the language or boundaries of the subject property, because that just means it couldn't be extended the way I'm looking at the site plan.
Okay, I don't think that that's our intention. We're going to put the decel lane in, but we don't want to be compelled to put it on go acquire someone else's property. Is it?
So basically, a decel, extension of the decel lane within the available right-of-way.
Is that fine, Dan, John? Okay. Yeah, I think that's what we intended.
Okay.
So we can make that change so that it would be within the available right-of-way.
And where is that going to be, at the end?
It's in number 2. So in number 2, if you read under the conditions I gave you as a handout, it says the existing deceleration lane along Jodico Road is to be lengthened within the available right-of-way in accordance with Henry County DOT standards. So we'll strike or boundaries of the subject property. Does that get it for you, David? Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Taking out boundaries. Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant? Anyone else? You may be seated, sir.
Oh,
one more.
No, I just, on condition number 11, so, for the lighting, which lighting, so we want to say downcast lighting, which will include multi-use pathway downcast lighting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you won't be in, so we can add that to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Just want to make sure.
And then, just so you know, members of the board, we did go through and self-exclude uses that we thought we would not need at all for the property. So you'll see under condition 9, we took out a lot of those, a lot of the uses that would otherwise be permitted in C3 or C2 that are heavier in nature, including we specified that there won't be any truck or freight transportation services or overnight parking there for those facilities. So it will be a true just convenience store for the traveling public.
Not a truck stop.
That's
Not
right.
a truck, like.
No, it won't be a truck stop.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for those speaking in favor of the case. 10 minutes for those speaking in favor. And if no one's coming forward, we would like to allot 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition. No one's coming forward. You may come forward again, Mr. Welch.
May I have a moment just to talk to Ms. Chambly, because she had a question for me and I didn't want to miss my cue.
Just do it afterwards. Just talk with her after. I think that this is for the board. Does the board have any additional questions for Ms. Welch? Okay. Okay, if there's no questions, we would like to call the case.
Case number case number RZ-16-26, Racetrack Petroleum Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA residential agricultural to C3 highway commercial for a property located at the intersection of Jodico Road and Patrick Henry Parkway in land lots 50 and 79 of the 6th District. The property consists of 2.29 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a gas station convenience store. The property is located in Commission District 4 and was presented by Ms. Julie Yoder.
Okay, you heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion to approve this case to a C3 with the 11 conditions that were presented by the applicant. with 2 changes on these conditions that were presented by the applicant. Condition number 2 will now read, the existing deceleration lane along Jodico Road is to be lengthened within the right-of-way, the existing deceleration lane along Jodico Road is to be lengthened within the available right-of-way in accordance with the Henry County DOT standards in order to provide deceleration lane for access to site. In condition number 11, we're going to add, this will include multi-use pathway downcast lighting, which is lighting for pedestrians and bicyclists along any multi-use pathway segments.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Back over to you, Ms.
Okay.
Thank you, members.
So
Thank you.
this is the end of our cases, and I need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.